And I will, wow, feverishly start sharing. Yes, it is blurry. Wow, feverishly start sharing. Drop that. Yeah, goodness, I gotta really start.
I think I know why it's blurry. I have to clean my glasses.
If it was only that simple. Okay, 1 second. Announcement.
Oh, yeah, it is somewhat blurry. I think it's because of the. Could see it.
Wait, everything was really slow today. I think this iPad's on its last legs. To be honest. Really slow. Really slow.
If I ever get that other computer from my friend, I will give it to you. It's a small Dell tower. It's a smaller footprint, but you can use that to, I guess, basically see everybody on Facebook if you want to do that.
Uh,
It'd be a smaller computer. You just have to get I just hit, well, you have to get like a screen for it. Is that what you use for, that you
I
use
know
the
what you mean.
iPad for?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. That I use the iPad to monitor the
The chat.
yes, the
Right.
Facebook feed and the chat, um, and so on. But it is I do think it's maxing itself out at this point. It's funny because I checked the available memory in it, and like half the memory is still free, but I find that it is lagging pretty much no matter what I do. If I'm Wi-Fi here at home, Wi-Fi at work, doesn't much matter. It seems to be lagging and dragging, and the screen is becoming unresponsive, which is odd. Um, I can
Well,
just
how much stuff do you have on that iPad?
well, it's a what's the highest available when I bought this? I think it was 128. I think I'm only using half the memory. I wouldn't say I have a ton on here. I would imagine the most uh, anything that I have on here is probably photos and videos.
Huh.
I'm sure some of them I could ditch, but according to the settings, half of the memory is still open and free
Yeah.
for usage. But I think maybe it's just I got this thing. This iPad's probably 10 years old at least.
I think I remember when you got that iPad, you
Might
were,
just
was it,
be
you were still in
maxed.
Moore's Plains.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It might just be maxed out. It might. That might just be. That might just be it. It might just be maxed out. So, could be that. I don't know.
Pardon the pun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right, because it is an iPad. Well, no, it's a Pro. Well, yeah, it's a Pro Max. Okay, so we're down to groups now. Are we at 456? We're okay. Here. Here. That one. Rejected. I think that group one is shut down. I'm tempted each and every week to drop this program into the one lone conservative group that will have me. And every week I don't. Probably should one of these weeks. All right, that should do it for the sharing. Am I early? Holy crap, did I share early? 99 shares. 99? What am I missing? I shared the show announcement 104 places. Where am I missing it? Well, I'm missing something. Nope, that's not right. Share page. There. Okay. That will make an even 100. 5 p.m. We will be. Our guest is in the building. Man himself is in the building. Volume. Comments are up. How are you, sir? You are muted for us still. You can't hear me.
There we go. How's that?
Hey, there it is.
How
Are
you
we having
doing?
fun or what?
Oh yeah.
This having this fun Zoom thing. We will be starting officially in just a few seconds.
All right.
Wait till 5:01. All right, let's hit it. We are going to be live in 3, 2, 1.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through, but not so doggone seasoned that he won't try something new? A man who's old enough to know
And young enough to do.
well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you.
But it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you want a man with spirit who is not afraid to fight?
A man whose record shows that he will fight for what is right.
A loyal man who'll bring the job a fresh new point of view? Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you.
Cause it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
And do you deny to any man the right he's guaranteed to be elected president, no matter what his creed?
It's promised in the Bill of Rights to which we must be true.
So it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you.
And it's Kennedy, 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 for me. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you like a man who answers straight, a man who's always fair?
We'll measure him against the others, and when you compare, you cast your vote for Kennedy and a change that's overdue. So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you.
Yes, it's Kennedy, 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 for me.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy,
Welcome, welcome, welcome from my humble second bedroom here in Bethlehem Landfill Township, a wholly owned subsidiary of Waste Management after their $100,000 purchase of our township council, formerly known as Lower Saucon Township, part of the Lehigh Valley in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, part of these United States, on this planet Earth, the only one we have. Third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system, part of the Milky Way galaxy. This is the Kennedy Effect live for the 27th of March, 2022. We have approached, we are actually, I shouldn't say approach, we're pretty much at the end of March. Is this year flying by or what? And winter has returned here to the Lehigh Valley. We actually had snow flurries today. How depressing is that after it felt pretty much like summer last week? We are back with you live after a week off. We apologize for the late notice, so to speak, on the late notice for the week off. But Kristen and I, you can tell my mouth is not working. My mouth took a week off and we're jumbling all sorts of things. It's always awesome when the radio guy can't talk. That's great. That's why we have a camera on me. Kristen and I needed a week to gather our petitions, and our petitions to become members of the Democratic State Committee from our humble Northampton County. And it is really with that in mind that brings us our guest today. I am very fortunate that I have a lot of good and close friends who have become part of this program and part of our family. And while that might sound a little backward, our guest today and I are not super close friends, but we do know each other and we've met each other, and we have met each other through this wonderful, very personal Zoom medium. A couple of different times we have been in a few meetings together. And it's this time of year as good and decent folks from across the Commonwealth and really across the country file their petitions in their various state capitals to become officers and hold positions inside their political party of choice. So what better time to talk to our guest today? But let me whip through some business really quick. Wherever you might be on Facebook, we have shared the program quite literally 100 different places. Wherever you might be watching, live or on a recording, we thank you. We thank each and every single one of you. We could not be here if you are not there. You can continue to watch wherever you might be across the 100 different places that we have shared the program. If you would like to interact with us, however, we need you to come to, there's a new graphic on the screen, fancy stuff. Come to our home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information, That Other Side of Information. It is up now right in front of me. I have welcomed a good number of you. I've already interacted with a commenter in the comment section. You can ask questions there. You can yell, scream, agree with me, disagree with me, whatever it is that you would like to do. Join us in the comment section, That Other Side of Information. To our friends and family and sisters and brothers at Hot101.net, one of the originators of global internet radio, and their over 100,000 listeners worldwide. We welcome you all back to Hot101.net and back to the Kennedy Effect live for today. If you do not know how to listen to Hot101.net, it is very, very simple. You can, there's a weird number in there. You can, I just got thrown off because there's a weird phone number in the Zoom and I don't know who it is. You can, our web address is our name. It's hot101.net. Apple App Store. You can find an app there for hot101.net, the Google Play Store, if you have an Android device, and of course, any other device, the TuneIn radio app, and you can listen there. Also, the TCP family, the cultured professional, a strong, wonderful, happy, minority-owned business from right here in our own Commonwealth in the Lancaster area. A very, very important voice inside our Commonwealth and around the country, really, because when you're online, anybody in the world can get to you. So that's us. Let me get, we will be opening the phone lines later in the program. We are thrilled that George is back with us after a week off as well. And it's just nice to have everybody back here and back home and back where they should be. So thank you so much for all being here. Let me get to our guest. Our guest, as I mentioned, it's petition filing time here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and of course across the country after redistricting has taken place after the census. So folks of good intention and good heart are filing petitions to be part of their party structure. For Kristen and myself, it is the Democratic Party, both on the local county, well, all three really, on the local county and state level. Our petitions will be filed tomorrow, and we are proud to do that and hoping that the voters will decide that we're worthy of it. So at this time of year, to speak about not just the importance of, I think we overemphasize sometimes getting involved in the process, we tend to overemphasize that you should run for public office. Well, there are a lot of other ways to get involved in the process as well, one of which is to become an officer, member, a voting member inside a political party. So what better person to talk to than the former state chairman of the Pennsylvania Democratic Party, and that is Jim Byrne. And Mr. Byrne, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show today at this very opportune time of the campaign season.
Let me also thank you a million times over. If getting guests to be on the program was as easy as it was when you and I chatted online, I would have a line of guests around the block. I messaged Mr. Byrne via Facebook Messenger and said, hey, at this particular time of year, I think it would be wonderful to have you on to talk about the importance of getting involved in the process. And you said, yep, sure, just tell me when. And boy, if that was If everything was that simple, man, let me tell you.
It's not always that easy to get me, but there was an alignment that day, and your timing was impeccable. You must
Well-
have the force must run strong through you. Sir.
I wish if it was only that simple. If the force ran that strong, I'd watch the lottery every night and I'd play with the balls, and we'd be really well off. But let me ask you, let me start the program with you the same way that I do with every guest. And it's the very same opening question that we ask every single guest. It is very intentionally vague because I want you to just answer whatever comes into your head. And that is, who is Jim Byrne and how did you get here?
Yeah, that's a very open question. With respect to the dynamic that brings me here today, I was 29 years old, living in the borough of Millville, which is right outside of the city of Pittsburgh, where I still live to this day. And it was time for the local elections. It was February, March of that year. And the conversations about the local town and the direction it was heading started to percolate. And the town was talking about making some changes. And I was talking to some friends, my brother in particular, who said, maybe you should run for mayor. You've been talking about it. You've been talking with folks in town. That's how it started. I ran for mayor that year. And by the time this conversation culminated, the petition deadline had passed for the spring. I had been a lifelong Democrat in a very democratic town, by the way. So what I did that year is I switched to independent, and I ran in the town, making sure people knew, win or lose, I was going back to the Democratic Party. And if not successful, to have a conversation about how to rebuild the Millville Democratic Committee to be more proactive, more grassroots, get people engaged, get voices heard, open doors, windows, get everybody at the table, and have opportunities for inclusion. And I won. It was a great result. We had a really good outcome. And from there, it went from there. I became chairman of the local party about 6 months later. We did a good job building a good team, rebuilding that, got into the regional political landscape up and down the Allegheny Valley. A few years after that, I was fortunate enough to chair the Allegheny County Democratic Committee. We were very successful there, I thought, on this model we're talking about. And I heard you say you're going for the local, county, and state. The algorithm is the same for all three in the party structure. The only thing that changes is the geography. But if you come with that model of openness, transparency, inclusion, let everybody come in and have a seat and have a conversation about what it is you're trying to build collectively, you'll be successful. So we did that at the county level. And it was in 2010 that I had a conversation with many of my colleagues around the state, because I had served 5 years as Allegheny County chairman, about taking that model that many of us were using in these counties and seeing if we could take it to the state level, perhaps emulate a Governor Dean 50 state strategy in a 67 county strategy format.
I think I just heard the angels sing. Yeah.
It happened. So I was elected, much to the chagrin of some in the establishment whom I came up with. We had to agree to disagree, and we got right to work. There was a lot of infrastructure needed done. We did that. By the time we got to the fall of 2011, I was in my second year winding down. President Obama was down double digits in Pennsylvania. We really started to kick in that infrastructure, engage all 67 counties. You may not win as a Democrat in Fulton or Potter or Tioga or Sullivan, but if you can go from 80 to 70 or 65, God willing, then the Alleghenies, the Philadelphias, the Centers, the Montcos, the Collar counties don't have to do all the heavy lifting. And we were very successful. Served 5 years doing that, left the party in September of 2015. We had it teed up. Everything was in place. First and goal on the 1 inch line with all 3 timeouts and a 2-minute warning. And we punched all those judicial candidates over the finish line and had a judicial sweep. So after that, back to Pittsburgh, been practicing law out here for, since I had the conversation about being mayor. Very busy out here being active in the party, in the legal profession, in the community. And it's very flattering to still be engaged in this process with activists like yourself and others across the state, here in Allegheny County, here in the borough of Millville where I live, and continuing to work with others like-minded about that message of openness, transparency, inclusion, thinking like a coach, putting the best candidate on the field that you think can win in November. So, in a long story, maybe a little bit longer than it needed to be. That's all I got here.
Your story of the end of your chairmanship is a bit thin. We know that for a lot of folks who tune in on a weekly basis, but we're also very lucky that we have new faces and new names appear up on the screen with me every week.
Mhm.
And not to try to tell the story in a negative or attacking way, but you kind of just slid past I left the party.
We can get
It
into
really
that.
wasn't that simple, was it?
No, it wasn't. Well, it was the same dynamic I faced when I ran in 2010.
And actually, you really didn't leave the party, though. You left. All right, we should specify it's the chairmanship.
I left the chairmanship. I was.
Would you say that you left the chairmanship, or was that decision made for you?
Oh, no. It was my choice.
Okay.
It was my choice. There's no one can debate that. No one can dispute that. No one can try to tell the history differently than
Okay.
what really happened. I formed an intent to run for chairman in the spring of 2014. We had just finished up 4 years of rebuilding that party, rebuilding that infrastructure, and being successful. We were the first institution to defeat an incumbent Republican governor after a 4-year one-time term. We did that. That had never been done. We swept the row offices in 2012. We won the presidency, the Senate. First time we won the attorney general seat, the Democrats, and we won with a female candidate. There's the two, never been done. We won the auditor general, we won the treasurer. We had a model for success. The model was winning. I wanted to finish it to make sure that we finished our work on the governor's race. And I wanted to tee it up for the national convention to come to Philadelphia. And I had unfinished work. Well, as most of your folks in this game know, there is a difference of thinking on how the chair gets selected to lead a party. Some say it's the pick of the nominee for governor. Others, including myself, say let's follow the rules and let's let the people who are elected in that room, which you're working to become, let them decide who their leader is going to be. And he or she.
What a novel concept that the Democratic Party should operate democratically.
Yes. So
what a crazy concept.
That had happened in 2020 or 2010 when I first ran. The incumbent governor did not want me to run. And I had enough votes to win and take this model to the next level. I knew if I did it, I would estrange a lot of people in the inner walls of power who may attempt to work against the party. Despite that pushback, I would put my 5 years as chairman with our team, and not all, a very diverse, talented team. I would put our record against any of my predecessors or successors. We did very, very well because of that openness and that inclusion. I don't care whether you're for me or against me. It isn't about me. It's about we. Come to the table. Let's build something. So 2014, there was pushback from the from the Democratic nominee. I chose to take the vote to the floor. They can count votes as well as we could, and they knew where it was going to go. So I got reelected in June of 2014. I served 15 months after that. It got to a point where the things I wanted to accomplish were accomplished. And I chose to put the gavel down, and I chose to move on and do some other things with the party, but not necessarily with the title of chairman.
I am very, very grateful for your answer. I say on this program every week, if you are not familiar, or for any new listeners who are not familiar, that I am thrilled to learn things that I did not know, and I'm happy to be corrected when I am wrong. I appreciate you clearing that up. You do understand that the impression is out there that it was not that simple.
Well, I make it sound simple now. It's been 7 years, but it wasn't as easy as it sounds. There was a lot of pushback. There was a lot of consternation. I did my best as a chairman to try to keep that family feud inside and not let it permeate out into the public, where our real adversaries may try to use it to be divisive. So yeah, it wasn't as easy as I'm making it sound. And a lot of people in the party and outside of the party were very, very uncomfortable with that dynamic. It was not a good dynamic. but we were able, after my reelection for the next 15 months, to continue to move the party forward. Despite that internal baseball debate about whose choice is it to lead the party, we continued to remain successful. We had 330,000 in the bank and about 50,000 in debt when I got reelected. 15 months later, when I handed the gavel over at the September meeting in 2015, we had $500,000 in zero debt. And we had teed up a wonderful slate of judicial candidates. We had Judge David Weck, Christine Donahoe, and Kevin Doherty for the Supreme Court. We had a seat for Superior. We had a seat for Commonwealth. We teed that up. We stayed focused on what we were elected to do. We did our jobs. We moved forward despite some pushback from outside and inside, and we were very successful. But it was not as easy as I'm making it sound now. And look, I'm not here to talk about, I am here to talk about whatever you want, but I've never emphasized the disagreement that we had and that I had with my brethren in the Democratic Party about how you elect a chair. Now, some people may have wanted to run with that, tried to run with that, tried to make that the story of the Pennsylvania Democratic Party for my last 15 months. My team and I refused to allow that narrative to dictate who we are and what we had to get done. And I would submit to you and your listeners and those who were there at the time and those who are learning about this now, that my last 15 months as chairman were as successful as the first 4 years of my tenure because of the team that we had, the talent in that room of the committee men and women in the outreach caucuses, and the fact that we had objectives, we stuck to those objectives, and we got the job done.
What does it mean to you if you're having those discussions? Either I had a smile when you said inside baseball, because I use that term all the time. Some of the stuff is very inside baseball. What does it mean to you when you have the continuing conversations that you have with the quote unquote person on the street, friends, family at Thanksgiving, crazy Uncle Larry, that kind of thing, or folks that, because you are obviously still involved, you still care about the party, you still care about the issues that the party stands for. What does it mean to you what does the Democratic Party mean to you? What does it mean to you to be a Democrat? How do you define it for yourself?
I define it now, as I always have, as a party of opportunity, a party of invitation to celebrate ideas, to celebrate challenging the status quo, to push back against groupthink, to push back against a collective way of doing things, a party to give people hope. I mean, this is how I feel it should be and needs to be. If you have an idea, you have a candidate, you want to be a candidate, you have a platform that offers opportunity for people to grow, to have a good life, to have a quality of living, to raise a family, to have a home, and to perpetuate leaders, elected officials, and ideals and legislation to perpetuate that type of thinking, then this is the party where you want to be. It's not a party about power. It's a party about people. I've always seen the Democratic Party as a party that works with people to get elected in order to acquire the power needed to make their lives better. I would submit under today's Republican Party that it's inverted. They see people as a means to acquire power. They see people as a means to an end and not the end in itself. And I think to this day, that continues to remain the most significant difference between our two parties in the 21st century.
Are there two parties now? Is there a functioning? I happen to believe, and I say my regular listeners and viewers will know, I say it every single week. I have a hell of a cache of quips that I give away every single week, and one of them is that while our party is not perfect, we're the only functioning political party left in this country. Would you?
And
agree?
by functioning, just so folks understand, by
functioning as far as we have a platform,
yeah,
we actually stand for something.
And we're arguing all the time about what that platform is supposed to look like. We have arguments, debates about what that platform is supposed to look like. That's not that's not dysfunction. If I was coming to a state committee meeting to chair it and going into the caucuses, if there wasn't some shouting going on about what direction we needed to go, when we got up on the floor and had a debate on resolutions or issues or candidates, and there wasn't some good intense back and forth, I would walk out of there worried. You need to have that type of healthy discourse in a free society. The Constitution works when you're arguing about what it's supposed to mean. And the Democratic Party, to your point, and I agree with you, exemplifies that by its dynamic, by its energy, and by its perpetual debate on what it is that needs to be on our platform. Conversely, when you look to the other side, there are moderates over there who are very estranged right now, concerned about the direction of their party, not sure what the heck is going on. It is very fractured on the GOP side right now. I've never seen it at this level. It's been poisoned by the Trump thinking. It's been poisoned by the QAnon. It's been poisoned by these conspiracy theorists and people who just flat out don't believe facts that are staring them right in the face. Great story by Chris Wallace, about Chris Wallace, former Fox News anchor today, who left Fox News because he got tired of the failure of that network and its anchors and its editors to accept cold hard facts about the insurrection and the real election results. So that speaks volumes when you have folks leaving that network because of how disillusioned and disconnected much of the thinking in the GOP has become.
Let's remember, folks, there's a couple of facts about Fox News, which is ironic. As they provide you none, there are actually some facts about them. I have said for a long time here on this program, Fox has essentially come down to billionaires paying multi-millionaires to tell you that poor people are the problem. Nothing could be further from the truth. And let's remember as well that Fox requires everyone that works there. You cannot enter the building on Fifth Avenue, and I know where the building is. You cannot enter the building without being fully vaccinated and boosted. So isn't that fun, kids? Isn't that fun? I was at our local Democratic committee meeting today, actually speaking to our group, a group I helped found after having no Democratic committee here in the Saucon Valley. You know our state well, so you know where we are.
I know right where you are.
In Hellertown, Lower Saucon Township. And I was surprised, sadly. I certainly mean nothing against the wonderful, wonderful older woman who asked me the question. But when Kristen and I, and there were 3 other folks there all running for state committee, there's actually, as you well know, Northampton has 6 representatives plus our county chair for a total of 7, 3 men, 3 women. There are 4 men running and 5 women running. So we actually have more candidates than spots, but I was disappointed to when I say disappointed, it makes it sound personal. And I don't mean it that way. That someone who was involved in our party enough to come to a monthly Saucon Democrats meeting, when I asked around the table if you had questions about why we were running and what we were running for, and a wonderful, wonderful woman just said, "What is state committee?" So Jim Byrne, what is state committee? What is, maybe I should back up. What is your vision of state committee? What do you think state committee is now? Why would an active Democrat not even know what their state party is or does?
That's not that person's fault. That's the fault of the current state committee for that person not knowing what the state committee is. The state Democratic committee is charged, as you spoke about your involvement in the committee at the local level, and you mentioned the county, and you mentioned the state. It's an organization to disseminate information about candidates, issues, current events, and to network into the communities at all levels of government to provide answers and interface to people who have questions about candidates, what's going on, and they are charged with having knowledge, experience, and some expertise in being able to be the folks in their neighborhood or in their districts to talk about those issues and candidates at the county level, at the local level. For example, let's use Millville or your community. I was the chairman of the Millville Democratic Committee. So my job is to tell the residents about the people running for mayor, borough council, but also get information from the county committee chair about the county candidates. Your local committee seat also gives you a seat on your county committee as well. So to be educated and informed about who they are. So when you're at the polls or when you're canvassing in a campaign cycle and somebody whose porch you're standing on has a question about an issue or a candidate, you should be prepared as a well-trained and qualified committee person to answer that question. State level, no different. The state Democratic Committee is elected through the 50 senatorial districts, and they are charged with the same thing, but now we're going up a notch. We're going to the state house, state senate, statewide races, senator, Congress, governor, things president, things of that nature. Then you get to the DNC above that, and Pennsylvania has 8 delegates that are elected DNC members. If you get elected, you'll be voting for them 2 years from now at the summer meeting to represent Pennsylvania at the Democratic National Committee. And again, the job is to be informed so that your community can rely upon the veracity of what you have to say about candidates and topics of interest in our government and in our elected representation. In a nutshell. And how do you do that? You said that you had somebody today who said, you know, what's the state Democratic Committee? We had one of the best communication departments in America for years. The communications department communicated with the committee members at all levels, communicated into the communities, and we had mailing lists of people that weren't even necessarily committee members, but we were able to access email lists, and they're very accessible. And every morning when somebody got up and turned on their computer or their iPad or their iPhone, one of the emails they would have was an email from the Pennsylvania Democratic Party Communication Department with headlines or commentary or issues important to us, press releases, things of that nature. So they knew who we were because the technology's there to be proactive and tell people who we were, what we were for, and why we were for certain candidates and why we were for certain issues. That speaks volumes to me, unfortunately, about how much this current party has fallen backwards from the progress we had made.
I mentioned, well, let me reset. I forgot. I'm forgetting my resets, folks. My resets are flying out the window. Even though we are not governed by the FCC, I try to stick to that. We don't swear much. I have let a couple fly.
Did I swear?
No, I have let a couple fly in the 3 years that I have been here. No, it's just that because we're on the internet, we're actually not governed by any FCC rules, but I try to stick to them anyway. We do have younger listeners. We had a program actually not too long. Well, actually, it is quite a while ago, probably 2 years ago now, where we had a panel of students, middle school students, talking about what it's like to go through school through COVID. So I try to stick to that. 5:33 Eastern time here on the Kennedy Effect. We are live and back with you. We missed you last week. Thank you for being patient with us, but we are back here live. Jim Byrne is our guest, wherever you might be across the Facebook universe. 100 places that we have shared the program to this week. Please feel free to stay there and watch and enjoy, live or recorded. However, if you would like to come over to our home group Facebook page, you can see the graphic on the screen. And if you are listening around the world on the radio, I will tell you where to find that right now. That other side of information is our home group Facebook page. That other side of information, you will see the program listed right in the timeline. We all know what a Facebook timeline looks like. Tap on it. It expands on the screen. That's where you'll see the comments. We will take your comments. We will take your questions. We will take anything that you may want to enter in there. Our sisters and brothers at hot101.net and listeners around the world, thank you for being with us yet again on this Sunday. We are proud to be part of the hot101.net family and the over 100,000 listeners around the globe, Australia, New Zealand, dotted across the African continent and the Western European continent, North America and South America, and all throughout the Pacific Islands. Thank you for being with us. If you do not know how to listen to hot101.net, it's really simple. Our website is our name. It's hot101.net. Apple App Store and Google Play Store for Android for our apps, the TuneIn radio app if you should have any other type of device, and of course, America's favorite game show. Jeff gets to speak loudly into the microphone and say, "Hey, Alexa, play Hot 101.net. And one of these days, someone is going to get me in the comments and say, you triggered my Alexa, and now I listen to you. And I will be giggly happy like a spoiled little child. And I will be very, very happy with that. And of course, TCP, the culture professional from Lancaster, PA, right here in our own Commonwealth. I described to the woman who asked me that question today, Mr. Byrne, that the state committee members are, it's not the most clean analogy, but it was the simplest and best one I could think of. We are kind of the legislature within our own party. Am I close in your mind? Am I wrong? And I'm wrong a lot.
If the
We're your representatives at that state level. I kind of almost look at the group on the floor at the big, Saturday morning floor meeting or Sunday morning floor meeting as kind of that, almost like a legislative body, but inside baseball, inside our party.
It's all three branches in one, really. I mean, when it comes to, it's a good analogy. I mean, it's close. It's pretty close. When we have those meetings, and to take a step back, what will happen is under the charter of the state party, 3 meetings are required a year. I know they had to do some things differently in that regard during the COVID cycle, but it looks like they're coming back to in-person meetings. 3 meetings a year. You have a summer meeting in June, then you have one usually in September, right ahead of the election. And then you have one in February. That's the marquee meeting for the state party. They will have meetings on Friday, the outreach caucuses, which represent the different demographics of Pennsylvania. You have the African American caucus, women's caucus, LGBTQ caucus, rural caucus, senior. When I was there, we created the progressive caucus. We created the senior caucus, and my last day in office, we gathered in the Latino caucus for the state of Pennsylvania. These caucuses will meet, they'll interact. They'll meet again Saturday morning. The chairman, the 67 chairman will meet. There's regions, 8 regions of the Pennsylvania party that will meet. And it's a lot of networking and interfacing with each other. And also, when we were there, inviting people outside of this infrastructure in on Friday night to the dinner and the receptions to talk about issues important to them. And then when you get there Saturday morning, whatever the agenda items may be, resolutions, we don't do legislation. Maybe there's an amendment to the bylaws, something like that. Or if there's an endorsement, which we're required by law, by rule, our rule to do in February, you'll have an endorsement meeting and you'll vote for candidates. So if you do it proactively and you do it in a way that engages the Democratic electorate of Pennsylvania, those 3 meetings involve 3 very, very busy days for each one of them, with a lot of work to set them up and a lot of interaction, and then a lot of follow-up when you're done to make sure that the contacts you've made for people that weren't part of it before, who maybe didn't understand what it was before, remain engaged with you after the meeting's adjourned. So it is kind of a legislative process, but there's other variables too, but that's pretty close to a triple bullseye, I think, for an analogy.
Our founding documents state that we, the people, in order to form a more perfect union, those words presuppose the fact that we were not then perfect, which we certainly weren't because we were brand new, and it continues to be called the American experiment, and that we would constantly be seeking to reach out for perfection. I have mentioned in the wonderful opportunities that I've had to speak to Democrats around Northampton County, as has Kristen, as have all of us that are running, that's what we're seeking to do. As chair, you did a lot of housekeeping inside our party. Is that, and should that not be a goal of our party, especially for those who like to throw rocks at it, that we continue to work to seek a more perfect party, just as we continue to use democratic principles to seek a more perfect union?
Housekeeping is a good way to describe the part of the platform. I know it's very cliched, but my objective, whether it was as mayor or chairman of the county or when I was president of whatever it was, the state party, of course. Leave it better than when you found it, and do so in a way that involved a team, and do so in a way that everybody who had a vested interest can walk away satisfied and knowing that they were part of the conversation. So that type of housekeeping, yes, there was no infrastructure. It was dependent on one person to survive, and that was Governor Rendell. We needed to build up the staff. We needed to build up our compliance. We needed to build up our communications, finance, outreach into the committees, outreach outside of the county committees to all organizations. So there was a lot of housekeeping that needed to be done, and infrastructure needed to be built. To answer, if I understand your question, that's something that you constantly have to be proactive at in any organization or any facet of your life. Something as diverse. I mean, this is the 5th largest democratic organization in America. And so exponentially, the larger anything gets, the more proactive you're going to have to be to A, continue to improve it, and B, maintain what you already have. You take your eyes off. I mean, we're getting into spring now. It wouldn't look like that out there, but we're getting into spring now.
Not today.
I'm sure, take your eye off that garden in about 3 weeks. Get that garden weeded, get it planted, get it seeded, watch it start to grow. But take your eye off it for 2 or 3 weeks and turn around and look at it again. You're not going to recognize it. And that's what we tried to do with the PA Dems. Clean it up, build it up, grow it out, and then continue to grow it and watch it and leave it better than when you found it. And you have to continue to do that. It may be the model we had or the model that was before me. The model has to grow like our Constitution to fit the needs of the society that it represents. The Constitution is always supposed to grow and breathe and represent the needs of the United States of America. And the models of these parties, whether it's PA Dems or pick one, they are there to fit the needs of the demographic they represent and the needs of the country that they represent. So whomever is leading it or charging it has to be honest about what they're hearing, what they're seeing, and what they know needs to be done. And they learn that by listening to others in that room and in that group about what it is that needs to be fixed or advanced. Then you fit the mold within the parameters of your charter to make that happen. Sometimes it's not something you may not want to do. Sometimes it's something that you have to do with people that are not necessarily your political allies. But we held ourselves above all on putting the institution ahead of the individual. That's how it grows, it becomes successful. And whomever is going to be leading it, moving into this historic cycle, needs to be very cognizant that that garden needs tended to right now.
I have attended state committee pretty much since I moved back to the Lehigh Valley after being in New Jersey for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
And much like I think way too many registered Democrats, and certainly the overwhelming preponderance of the ones that I was fortunate enough to speak to through the petition process, they didn't know that they could even attend a state committee meeting while not being a voting member. That seems a very basic loss of communication to me. When we mentioned at our Saucon Democrats meeting today that you can go to all of these meetings. Now, granted, who wants to do a meeting every single night a week? I get that, but simply by being a registered Democrat, the door's supposed to be open to you, even perhaps into municipalities that you don't live, and certainly your areas or your county districts. I'm getting a little in the weeds, but certainly your county meetings and so on. You're welcome. You may not be a voting person, but okay, but you're still welcome. You can still listen. You can speak. You can give an opinion, shake hands, meet people, introduce yourself, and so on and so on and so on. How? It's probably hard to take this question in any other way than a negative way, but how far have we fallen if the active registered Democrat doesn't even know that they are welcome to state committee meeting?
It's a fall, and it leads. It's a bad fall, and that communication is the lifeline. That's the oxygen. You don't have communication between those who you represent, your institution will not be successful. And we've seen it. Donald Trump wins Pennsylvania. I can tell you where those votes were that were lost. They were in the 79 corridor out here where I live. You leave Pittsburgh, take 79 north. For your listeners, they probably know this. It's about 2 hours until you get to Erie. In between there, those counties went very red. And some counties around Allegheny where Pittsburgh is, Washington, for example, Beaver, Westmoreland, Greene County, there were votes there by disenfranchised Democrats who felt as if their voices weren't being heard. Now, I think about $100,000, which I know they had. $100,000 on some outreach out on the 79 corridor would have kept Pennsylvania blue. No communication. The votes were lost out here. Pennsylvania went red. And look at the last couple of cycles we've had statewide. We are not doing well. That comes from people asking that question you had posed to you today. What's the state party? The state party has an obligation to tell the voter of Pennsylvania who it is. It is the flagship of all things Pennsylvania Democrat. That's what it is. And it needs to plant that flag out front of anyone else. The elected officials are critical, but as critical, the life's blood of a successful Democratic Party are the men and women who come to those rooms and come to those meetings, the committee men and women and the Democrats who come to partake in the process. That's the life's blood. And when you're not engaged and you're not communicating with the life's blood and then disseminating information out into those communities, you have a garden full of weeds, the plants choke, you start losing races, and that's where you get in trouble. That's the regression, sir. That's the regression. Lack of communication and proactive. You got to keep people engaged. Let them know what's going on. Nature abhors a vacuum, especially in the political dynamic. And if you give voters a vacuum, they're either going to make things up for themselves or they're going to be told by the other side who is communicating a story that may not be consistent with the facts or with our candidates. That's where we got into trouble.
This is where, if I have any skill as a host, I will get this right, because there's a lot of different ways that we could go here. But I will somehow try to choose to go this way. My partner and person who lives here with me, and I'm still stunned that I'm that lucky that she's here with me, Kristen, is from the center of the state, Snyder County. And one of the continuing conversations that we have sometimes on even a daily basis, and it is not one that we always agree on, is the near complete disintegration of the party, its message, its values, its membership in the rural counties of Pennsylvania. And not unlike a lot of other states around the country, perhaps Ohio, Missouri, I could probably think of Oregon, perhaps Washington. I'm sure I could think of others, but even New York State, come to think of it, Pennsylvania is extremely diverse. The sixth largest city in the country is here, but yet you can drive through some of the rural counties and not see a structure for a good long time. The party has become almost non-existent in some of these counties. Kristen is way more patient and compassionate than I. I am very, very Irish and bring that Irish temper with me, I think, where she says that the party doesn't speak to them anymore. I happen to look at us as the only damn ones that are trying to help them. And that, to a great extent, the reason that rural counties are in the condition that they are in is because sometimes you get the government you vote for. And that the other party, with all of its platitudes and all of its flat out lies, to be honest, about how much they care about farmers and rural folks and education and clean land and freedom and all of these wonderful platitudes, it's exactly those policies that have condemned a large section of rural Pennsylvania to poverty and to disease and to environmental disaster. What have we gotten wrong from your experience before you were chair to your chairmanship to now? How has the Democratic Party, the party of Roosevelt, the party of the New Deal, the party of the moonshot, the Peace Corps, the Great Society, solar panels on the White House. How have we completely lost upwards of 2/3 of our fellow residents in the counties in our Commonwealth? How have we completely how can they look at us as the enemy when they're the only ones that are trying to help? What am I missing?
The people want to feel welcomed. People want to know that they have a voice. People want to know that they're not forgotten. Some of the hardest working members of the state Democratic Committee are going to be found and continue to be found in the T. You will. I used to, when I would go, I was in Snyder County more than once when I was chairman, and when I would go into a Snyder County or into a Fulton County or a Bedford, pick one, go up into the top across Sullivan's Highway, go across there. You would meet the committee men and women in those areas of our Commonwealth, and if you would, if you would take two or three of them down and put them in Allegheny or Philadelphia, they were doing yeoman's work, the canvassing, their attentiveness to issues and details. They could move mountains, and there they were. They felt like they were a fort 150 years ago, like the one that Kevin Costner rode into on Dances with Wolves. They just
Always the one I think of. Always the one I think of when I use that analogy.
I went into those counties as chairman, and I saw all those Kevin Costner forts sitting around with one or two people looking for a little bit of relief. We gave that to them. No, they're not. We're not going to be able to write $1 million checks to them, but we're going to interface with them. We're going to hook up, communications with them. We're going to give them things through the state party, Vote Builder, access to information through our networking, our communications team. Give them some resources and some attention, some talking points, to answer some of the questions, to explain to their rural family, friends, and neighbors why they are being misled, or why the platform of the Democratic Party is more conducive. And those things make a difference. Now, you're not going to beat registration. It's just the hard facts. I mean, I'm not going to go down to Crawford County where George Bush lives and be successful as a Democrat, more likely than not. Conversely, our Democratic candidates aren't going to be doing sweeps up in Potter County. It's just not in the cards. But if we go in there and we're using what we have and sharing it with those, I'm telling you, you got some hardened warriors out there in the T working hard for our party, giving them just a little gas in the tank to do some things. You'll watch those 85-15s, 80-20s start to come in. And that Governor Dean did it when he was chairman. We were starting to see states flip and become competitive that hadn't gotten that attention from the DNC. It was an easy model to emulate, and we emulated it. That's how you reverse that tide, and that's how you start to become successful statewide.
Missouri, Iowa, Wisconsin. Yeah. I mean,
yes.
And we mentioned that today, actually, it's at Saucon, that because one of the folks running for state committee, Victoria, a friend of ours, of course, ran for township council here. As you heard in my opening, was wildly outspent by corporate money. But that I've tried to make the case to a lot of candidates that I work with. I'm very fortunate to work with a lot of candidates. They trust me. Thank God. I hope that doesn't end. He knocked on some wood. We found the hardest wood I can find and knock on that. And that not every loss is a defeat. And it was to me that am I encapsulating a bit of what you're saying about the rural areas, that you're not, if a district is, R plus 35, no, we probably can't expect to win there. But don't we as a party have a duty to at least go to the folks in that R plus 35 and say, folks, we're not the enemy here. At the very minimum, you may not vote for us. We may not agree on a lot of issues, but we're also not the ones that got you where you are.
That's it. I mean, exactly. And not having seen the Democratic Party in some of these counties do that was a novelty. and it turned some heads. And giving that message to the Democrats in those counties and giving them some things to work with, making sure they had a speaker for their dinners, making sure they had some infrastructure for their events, going to their dinners, myself or other officers of a party as a keynote speaker or as a guest, and looping them in and or just picking up the phone and calling the local chair. I remember it was Guy Ferguson was the chair when I first of Bedford when I first got in. A guy like that you call, or Rion Galvin in Fulton County. Pick one. You pick up a chair. Like, who is this? It's Jim Byrne. What, the state chairman? What? I'm just checking in, and letting them know that there was someone in Harrisburg or someone at the headquarters to help them to be more effective and successful. But you're right. The R35 isn't going to flip, but pretty soon the GOP can't overlook the middle of the state because we're in there, swapping punches at the local, state, or national level on issues. Now they have to engage. Now they're fighting on more fronts than they're used to fighting on. And that's part of an overall equation to engage the entire Commonwealth. And when you start adding those margins up across the T, you start winning gubernatorial races after 4 years that you never did before. You start sweeping statewide row offices that you never did before. You win attorney general, which you never did before. You win 5 judicial seats, which no party ever did before. Persistence, steady. Don't let off the gas and keep everybody engaged. And people will move mountains. They want to be part of something. And this is a good thing to be a part of, especially at this critical point in our nation's history.
I have a flood of comments. I'm very, very fortunate this week. We have a flood of comments. I'd like to give a couple of them to you to see what you think of them. Christina Joy Fulton says, red rural Pennsylvania makes winning races difficult, so no one wants to pay attention. How can we, I hope I read this right, how can we value our self-worth on winning in a 70R 30D? We don't. Therefore, we focus on representing, not winning. Let Democrats feel proud to represent, win or lose. Run smart and cheap campaigns, maybe less expensive, not cheap. I'm a little editorial right there. The empty ballots are hurting rural Democrats. They are psychologically defeating and create apathy. Help us find candidates. Your response, sir?
Absolutely. Candidate outreach. And candidate outreach is people like yourself. If I were the chairman and you reach out to me with that question, I have a conversation with you. Our outreach team, our candidate recruitment team has a conversation with you, because I'm not going to come into Fulton County, or I'm not going to come in to Potter County, name one, Snipe, name one.
Wayne, Indiana, say, hey, Tioga.
Here, Tioga, let me go up and
Wyoming.
tell Chair Donahoe. Let me tell Chair Donahoe in Sullivan County who's needs to be on her ballot. She'll throw me out. I come to you. Okay, do you have names? If somebody calls me cold out of her county and says, hey, I'd like to run for office out here, but nobody's returning my calls. Oh, that sounds like, let's get you on the ticket. Well, maybe there's a reason that person isn't being solicited by the local leadership. Find out from the people on the ground.
But then why is that different? What you just said. I want to jump on what you just said. Okay. Why is that different when you say that you have no business to go to rural county and tell them who their candidates are going to be? Then why the hell are we doing it in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh?
I don't agree with that, because I said so. The David Lawrence days.
Why is the party chair in Philadelphia 19% voter turnout in 2021? And I have friends in Philadelphia. We all have friends in Philadelphia, but ones that walk the streets.
Let me answer your question. To find local candidates for local office at the state level, I am going to defer to who's on the ground in those counties. Tell me who it is that you have, and we're going to help you. I am not going to come in to your county as state chairman because I got a call from somebody in your county without talking to you first. So actually, we're saying the same thing. If the chairman of Philadelphia or the chairman of Allegheny, has a slate, you have to give him or her the benefit of the doubt that they know what's going on in their county to do it. However, that's not working. That's not working the way it should. And we're seeing this. Endorsed candidates from these county parties are getting their butts whooped in primaries. And that leads to the dissolution of strong county parties. If the people they're endorsing are getting endorsed for the wrong reasons, it's a kiss of death to get endorsed. Allegheny County Democratic Committee today just had endorsements. 2 progressive women, office holders, current office holders, got smoked by establishment handpicked candidates. That's not how you think like a committee person to elect the right person. That's a mistake. You have to think like a coach. The coach, thinking like a coach as a committee person or as a chairman, is to put the best candidate on the field to win in the fall. And that person may not be somebody you like personally, or maybe not be somebody that's for you or that you would have picked. But if on paper and you're hearing it on the street, this person right here is better than these glasses, and I'm going to put this person on the field. And when you don't do that and you get slapped down primary after primary after primary, because you're trying to use the David Lawrence model from 75 years ago, you are destroying the credibility and the infrastructure of the county parties and hurting us overall.
Judy says the party doesn't speak to anyone anymore. There is no communication at the local level. I know that we spoke about this a little bit, but Judy was kind enough to put a comment, so I want to present it to you. Is it important to keep, is it important? It's important to keep the people involved. Lackawanna County doesn't respond to callers, messages, nothing. Your response?
My response is, for us to be successful, the county parties need to reach out and they need to have communication. Have you noticed one of the biggest common denominators we've had in our conversation here this past hour? Lack of adequate communication at all levels of the party. Reaching out to rank and file. You don't just speak to the men and women that are elected into the committee. You speak to the people that come to the ethnic caucuses, and you speak to your constituents. What have you been doing for the last 2 weeks? Getting signatures. Why? To be on a ballot. Why? To be elected. Now, those people that elected you can't be forgotten. You have an obligation to those constituents. Maybe they're calling to yell. Maybe they're calling because they don't like something. Democratic institutions, these committees at all levels, are 911 call centers. These folks aren't calling to talk about the weather or the Pirates or the Phillies. They're calling because they have an issue. It's a service industry that we're in on a voluntary basis.
They're the 411 and the 911.
We're all of that rolled into one and 24/7. You know, that call may be, oh, my neighbor has a Trump sign in his yard, but I thought he was a Democrat. Okay. What are you going to do about that? If they're not on the committee, what are you going to do about that? You're going to listen to the call and have a conversation with them and just let them let off some steam. But that's a very important call to that constituent. You blow them off or you fluff them off or say, why are you wasting my time? Or worse yet, ignore them altogether. You're going to lose that voter. You're going to lose that voter. The county chairs, if I were chairing the party, I'd be directing them to get more responsive and inclusive to those calls. I don't want to be returning those calls for you. My staff doesn't want to be returning those calls for you to mend fences in your backyard because you're not doing your jobs. Now, you know, that's assuming, you know, that what this person's saying is accurate. And I have no reason to disbelieve that. Our local county chairs know the groundwork better than anybody. But when those type of facts present themselves, that you're not effectively reaching out to the Democrats that you're representing, we're going to have problems. We're going to have drag on our candidates, and it's going to come back to bite us repeatedly. It's going to disenfranchise folks. We can't afford that at any level. Philly, Allegheny, especially out in Lackawanna or in the T.
Christy Murphy Moore says our school board candidates took the biggest hit this year. Democrats running in rural areas had little to no support against the national messaging of the GOP opponents. I hope it will be different in 2023. Your response?
The Democratic Committee has elections for officers this year. Right now. It's happened. It'll be in June. The county chairs and the county parties will be reorganizing as well, as will all the local municipal parties reorganizing leadership. You're absolutely right, ma'am. The national party, and that should scare the hell out of your listeners. The national party, the party which is currently Donald Trump's party, is going all the way down to the school board level with messaging, communication. There's that word again, messaging, all the way down to the school board level. because they want to control the school boards. That should scare the hell out of everybody. The DNC needs to, they were engaging, they could have done better. The state parties, you need to staff up and find candidates through cooperation of local leadership, party and non-party Democrats alike, to get viable, proper, appropriate, qualified candidates on those school boards. The GOP is coming in and trying to take the foundation of our society with school boards, and then we're seeing some of the frightening things they're doing with books and other issues in our educational institutions. It is the front line. This is as critical as midterms in Congress, coming on an end around to take these school boards, local parties, national and state. All hands on deck with candidates and messaging for 2023. Learn from the mistakes of 2021.
6:06 Eastern time. Time for a quick reset wherever you might be on Facebook. 100 places the program has been shared to this week. If you are watching and listening, you can share the program. You can share it. Let me just put it that way. Share it. Send it around. It's how we survive. We could not be here if you are not there. That other side of information is our home group Facebook page, a very active commentary and chat happening right now on the program on our home group Facebook page. We appreciate every single one of you. Thank you for being here. Hot101.net is the website, Apple App Store, Google Play Store for Android, and you can tell Alexa to play Hot101.net and the TuneIn Radio app. And of course, TCP returns tomorrow morning with the morning show, and you can find us on their Facebook page, their website, and their Roku channel. Let me ask you about something that you were saying, that the Koch network, Heritage Foundation, etc., ALEC, just to name a few, the Commonwealth Foundation is part of the Koch network. And there is a Commonwealth Foundation in every single state in the union and every territory, by the way. The Koch network spends more money and has more full-time employees than both major parties combined. When you pile up the Koch network with whatever remains of the Republican Party, again, I don't call it a party generally, I usually call it a corporation, because the folks who are Republican office holders are basically employees providing the profit for the people at the top. That's essentially what a corporation does. When you pile up the Koch network with Republicans, we're pretty darn outnumbered and outspent. How do we fight that?
We fight that with micro targeting. We just have we have the ability to defeat that. You're talking about 40,000 foot messaging and the money and all of those resources they have. But what they're not doing is they're not using the algorithms, the voter data, and the technology. And I still think that the DNC is probably 15 or 20 years ahead of our Republican counterparts on what we call micro-targeting. Vote Builder, both parties have it. It's a very, very powerful and effective tool. Every time you engage with a voter, you keep accurate records of the conversations, and there's a science to it now. When we were working with President Obama's team in 2012, they could create a list, a street list for you, or a target list for you on demographics. It could take you all the way down to some of the most amazing things. They told us that they were going to win Ohio because in the suburbs of Cleveland, there was the African-American male voter was still in some demographics undecided on President Obama because he hadn't adequately addressed issues relative to unions for African-American workers. It's been 10 years, but words to that effect. And they had the micro-targeting down to a science, and they knew what component of the president's message needed to be heard by that person, who they said worked third shift in the Cleveland suburbs. So if you turned on your TV in the middle of the night and saw a President Obama commercial on union issues, you're wondering why they're wasting their money at 3 o'clock in the morning. It wasn't meant for you unless you were an African-American male voter who was targeted by their demographic, which showed they needed to do better in that group. They did. That's the science that we have to our advantage. So how do we beat that millions and millions of dollars? We beat it by being smart with the resources and the technology we have. We get that information on those targets of demographics and voters who are with us, who should be with us, who are waning from us. Find out why, find out what part of our democratic platform is the message that they are not hearing for whatever reason, and be sure that we get that message to them. That takes a lot of work, that takes a lot of boots on the ground, that takes a lot of activism. But if there's anything I've learned in my 30-year career of being in this game or this business, it's when you go door to door with the effective tools, technology, and training and the right people, you can beat that big money, and you will beat that big money. So that's what the party at all level needs to do. Use its technological advantages and get its volunteers out there messaging to the voter door to door.
I feel like, and please, I want you to correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like as brilliant, and that word probably doesn't even cover it, perhaps even revolutionary as the Obama campaign was, I feel like a lot of that has not survived. Like a lot of that has not been passed on or replicated by candidates coming forward from that, by staffers coming out of it. How did we develop such a precise instrument and then not pass it down for others to take advantage of? Or have we? Am I wrong?
I believe the information has been shared. I believe the information and the modeling in that science remains out there. I saw it with the Biden campaign. I wasn't directly involved, but I saw him using a lot of that type of outreach and that innovation with his campaign. When Obama for America, the OFA, it worked alongside of the DNC after when he in 08, and then it integrated somewhat with the DNC, but not completely. But a lot of that we did see integrating in 2012. The chief of staff for President Obama in Pennsylvania worked directly with our chief of staff for the state party, and we had a good coordinated campaign. So we were privy to a lot of that. And I do believe that the DNC has since been given the many of the keys to that engine room to work with those tools. The disconnect comes with the inability, for whatever reason, or perhaps the lack of attention to detail on our side, to just push those buttons and use that incredible technology more proactively and more aggressively. And that comes from, in part, leadership needing to do a better job of getting the rank and file and the people in the room motivated to do that. And there are a lot of activists out there that may not necessarily be committee men or women that would be equally enthusiastic to go out there with that modeling and that messaging and get onto the street. That's sometimes a paradox of our party. It's a group of volunteers. And what do you do with volunteers? You thank volunteers. Some committee men and women, they may make 100 phone calls a day, and that's it for them. They think they've done, and perhaps that's the best they can do. You thank them for that. Someone else may knock 1,000 doors and think they didn't do enough. But you have to thank the volunteers in the committee. And where there are areas in the committee, like your one questioner said, I think from Fulton, where there are areas in the committee that perhaps there are committee men and women, they're not on the committee, or there's an absence, or there's a gap. Find activists in your community that can come in and fill in those gaps. So I'm going all off about that to answer that question, but the point is, it's out there. People need to do a better job in using it for us to get successful and get ahead of this big money drop that we see every cycle.
Then let me ask you what I think is a related question, or what I hope is a related question. A good host will ask related questions. What happened to your plan in Pennsylvania? What do you think happened? You've referenced Chairman Dean's 50-state strategy, and as disappointing as it was to see Chairman Dean leave the DNC and become a board member of several health insurance companies.
Right.
Why, I don't think that was by accident, by the way. I'm sure somebody in some dark smoke-filled room somewhere said, if we can offer him 10 mil a year and put him on the board of these 20 companies, we might, maybe we'll move him out, because he was exceptionally effective.
Mhm.
Your strategy, you've referenced his strategy in your chairmanship as well. What happened to your strategy?
Well, I think it worked. I mean, if you're asking me if it worked for us,
Oh,
I'd
I
say that
absolutely think it, but why hasn't it carried forward? Why do you think it hasn't carried forward? Why do you think there's this fundamental, or at least, even if it isn't real, I happen to believe it's real, but even if it's not real, there is a deep perception in our party that folks on the ground, PCPs, rural counties, are simply not listened to. That every decision that's made, every bylaw that's passed, every resolution that's passed is for the good of two areas. I would say my area is a damn big one now and better start getting looked at, but is for the benefit of two areas and the candidates and the power people in it, and sadly, for some to make some money. What happened to your strategy, in your opinion? Why hasn't it carried forward? Or do you think it has carried forward? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you think it has carried forward. What happened to it?
I agree with you. I don't think it carried forward. If it carried forward, we wouldn't have gotten some of those calls or messages we got today. If it carried forward, you wouldn't be telling me about the person who doesn't know what the hell the Democratic Party is. If it carried forward, you wouldn't be telling me about all this disconnect and lack of communication, which I'm very well aware of. The question is why? And that's a very easy question to answer. My successors quit using that model. It's not complicated. They quit using that model. It's a constructive criticism. They wanted to do things the way things used to be done. Be told what to do by others and not make decisions for yourself or make decisions based on what the room wants to do. The party is the flagship. It is the party for everybody. It's the building. The variables are the elected officials and the committee people that pass through it. No different than a constitution. The Constitution is the constant. Our job is to interpret it and make it better and make it work and make it win. And that's what the state party, and that's what our model was built to do. Get the individuals in the room and then implement the model. When I was a mayor, we had a emergency operations manual. We built it. We took years to build it. When Hurricane Ivan hit, we opened the book. It talked to us. We got through that flood. It's the same thing. You put a model together built on how to win based on the dynamic of your situation, but then you have to use it. And this is the bigger debate. This is why I think they quit using it. If you're going to chair the Democratic Party, a party as big as ours, fifth largest in America, you have to think for the institution and put the institution first. That means you're going to take some serious political hits. You're going to anger some people in power because you're not doing what they may want you to do if you think it isn't for the best interests of the institution. And oftentimes elected officials, God bless them, they're our candidates, they represent us, and they are our brother and sister Democrats. But when it comes to the dynamic of the party operation, they may want to see the party do things that are more beneficial and maybe act in such a way as perhaps it's their political arm or it's their committee to elect. Well, it's not. It also represents people in the party that may have run against them or may have worked against them or may not think like they do. But if you allow one or two elected Democrats to control the party, you do so at the risk of allowing it to operate under that 67 county strategy and under that model in such a way that it can be successful. And if you're a chairman or a leader in the party and you're waiting to be told by someone in office outside of the party, you will not be able to run that model successfully. If you're going to do it, you have to be prepared to do it at great political personal sacrifice to do it right. And that's why I think it's not happening now. They're not using it because they're running the party in a way differently than I did. They're not running it like the flagship. They're running it like a political wing of other elected officials. And when you do that, you cannot be effective. You cannot be successful.
Let that lead me into the topic of endorsements, because it is a very large point of contention inside our party. Some state committee members seem to think their sole purpose for being a state committee member is to endorse candidates. Others believe we have no business in that if there is a contested primary, because gee, isn't that the fundamental foundation of democracy? We go into the polling place and privately cast a vote for the person and or policies and or fill in the blank that we believe is best for ourselves as individuals, our neighborhoods, our municipalities, our counties, our commonwealth. What is your general opinion? Well, let me back up. There's also a sizable number of Democrats, I'm sure you've heard this, that feel the party is exceptionally heavy-handed in its endorsement process, trying to really put a heavy thumb on the scale, and this is our person. And to heck with all the other people, regardless of the quality that those people may be. No, that's our guy. And there's an inherent bit of distrust built into that, right or wrong. Mine is not to sign off on it. I'm asking a long-winded question. I always do that, but it's host privilege. I ask long-winded questions. What role does the party really have in endorsements, and should it be what has become to be the real keystone, no pun intended, cornerstone, foundational brick that it has become? It seems to me with the governor's race is pretty simple here in 2022. That party endorsement is pretty damn obvious, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Senate campaign is not as self-explanatory. Shouldn't the party then step back and go, this is a list of genuinely decent, I don't think we use that word enough, genuinely decent, quality human beings. We're going to sit this one out. Democrats, go vote, and you choose, and we will back whomever you choose. But instead, the party really tried to ram through an endorsement. What is your ideas, thoughts, general feelings about the inside baseball party endorsement process?
There's so much in that question.
I do that too often.
No, we could talk for a month about this one, but let's go there, man.
Well, because I think it helps contribute to the disconnect.
Yeah,
that you and I have talked about so much in this, and that the commenters have mentioned so much in this program.
No, nobody understands what it is or what it means outside of the insiders. A lot of times, what the hell's an endorsement? Who are these folks that endorse this person? Why didn't I get asked to endorse?
Or why is the party putting so much pressure on us to endorse that one and not that one?
Okay. Yeah. Well, it depends on why. It depends on why they're doing it. If it's for the right reason. But let's step back a minute. If it depends on why. It depends on why as to whether or not it should have more or less credibility. Because I said so, insufficient. If it's, well, we've done a lot of vetting and I've been, doing the research and we've talked to this person can't raise money. This person can. This person, based on the polling that we've seen and that we've done, this person is best suited to line up in the fall. If you're doing it because you're thinking like a coach and you're thinking like a coach because you've studied film, then that's a reason. If it's because you grew up in the same neighborhood with that person or that person helped you get elected 5 years ago, then no, that's unacceptable. It depends on which reason it is. If it's something in between, you start to get gray, that creates problems too. We're one of the only states left, Pennsylvania, Democratic Party, that still does it. And there's the progressive wing has hated it forever. And the more you see progressives coming into the party, and you're seeing that more and more every cycle, the more tenuous the endorsement process becomes for moving forward. But the more progressives coming into these parties, and they're coming in all across the country, that think it should be done away with. It's built on a model that doesn't exist anymore. If it's not being done for the right reasons. You get endorsed over me for governor because you have $20 million in the bank. Your name recognition is through the ceiling. All the polling shows that you are a 10-point advantage over any of the Republican candidates. Then why shouldn't you get endorsed if I can barely raise 2 wooden nickels? Nobody knows who I am, and I can't get my campaign off the ground. And I've made some bad decisions as a mayor of Millville. So
Oh,
Aren't you the better candidate? You should be endorsed.
the angels are singing again, because I think we do this. I think I've been actually quite ridiculed for this as promoting some sort of 1940s Chicago machine fedora cigar kind of thing that
That's where it came from.
I think we do too. I think we actually have, and it's going to sound contradictory to my previous question, but we sometimes get a little too into our primaries, that we really like a primary,
Right.
when in fact, especially in the areas in the Commonwealth where we are weaker,
hmm
I don't think there's anything wrong with a couple of candidates, 3 candidates, 5 candidates, 10 candidates, getting in a room over a dinner table and laying the cards out, saying, look, here's where my support is coming from. Here's where I think I can pull votes. Here's the money I have in the bank. I have these endorsements lined up. And you lay that out. And then I say, well, here's where I think mine's coming from. Except, Jim, I think you got me. I don't think I can raise that kind of money. And if you already have that union supporting you, I can't beat that. So I'm going to step back, but I'd like to help you. And you look at me and say, that's a ridiculously magnanimous thing to do, but I think it's the best thing for our party, and I think it's the best thing for our chances in the fall. And if we get elected, that's how we help people. So how do we balance the endorsement part? Because look, if we have a real, we have a Republican and Democratic clothing, then yeah, the endorsement's probably a really powerful thing. But when we have a list of really good candidates, why are we not trying to avoid costly primaries, especially in areas where we're not as strong? Or why are we weighing on that scale when there's not a clear choice? Should the party have tried so damn hard to endorse somebody in this U.S. Senate race? Would be my primary example.
Yeah. Sometimes you can get into a room like that and talk amongst each other and decide maybe, it's not any of our time, it's your time. That's a good way to do it if you're having an honest conversation. But to your hypothetical, you got 3, 4, 5 people in that room that have just as good a story and support and polling to tell, then you're going to have to take them out onto the field. It's just going to have to be a process.
Okay.
And when
everybody shakes hands and walks out and says, hey, no problem, let's let the voters decide. Let's
do it. And that we're seeing that in the governor's race, and we see that, oftentimes we see that. If it's done for the right reasons, that's fine. You're going to have it. But then you said, why did the party push so hard in the Senate race to do it? Well, if the party had enough votes to suspend the rules mandate that you have an endorsement, they would have needed a 2/3 vote to suspend the rules and do an open primary. And you've been going to those meetings a while. You know that for the most part, you can usually expect a motion from the floor, and you usually get it. And I did it for 5 years. Every February endorsement meeting, I entertained a motion from the floor to suspend the rules and not have an endorsement for a variety of reasons. But it's parliamentary procedure. 2/3 vote to sustain the motion to waive the rules and not have it. It's never been passed. And then once that happens, you have at the Pennsylvania level, you have to have a 2/3 vote. You have to have 66 2/3% of the quorum to get that endorsement, meaning that the folks that if you're going to get it, the bar has gotten a little higher for you. That gives some more validity to it as opposed to like 5 people running for it and the winner has 30% of the vote. That makes the bar a little bit higher. That endorsement maybe has a little bit more validity. As you recall, this year, none of the Senate candidates got it because nobody could get to the 2/3 threshold. If it's there, if you're going to have it, and that debate about whether or not to get rid of it is going to continue, support for it continues to wane. But if you're going to have it, the 2/3 rule is a good thing to have. And if you're going to endorse, it better be for those type of reasons that you and I just shared in our hypotheticals, and not because somebody owed somebody a favor, or you like the color of his tie, or he had a nice hospitality room the night before. That type of nonsense will put a dagger further into the endorsement process.
Does the endorsement process in your mind, can it be divisive?
Very much so. Very, very much so.
Is that divisiveness something that's plaguing our party.
Yes, right now it is. Right now it is at the county level, not as much at the state, but your listeners and viewers should pick up some of the not go online, go to your Twitter accounts, go to your Facebook accounts. Look what happened in Allegheny County today. Look what happened in Allegheny County today. You get the endorsement out here right now in this county party, it's almost like a kiss of death in a lot of instances because of how it's happening. You have two, at least today, I haven't caught up on it yet, but my Twitter's been blowing up. Two incumbent qualified women candidates. And this state needs to do better in electing qualified women candidates, and our party should be the leader in that. They are losing endorsements. They haven't voted for Republicans. They haven't walked away from our party's ideology or its values. They've been some of the most active, dynamic, brilliant leaders Southwest Pennsylvania's seen in the last 50 years. They lose 2-1 today. Why? Why?
Yeah, but
It's
Jim,
because of
that's happening. That's happening across the Commonwealth. You had Danielle Farrell-Otten have party-sponsored primary opponents. You had Summer Lee, Sarah Innamorato, a primary sponsored. Chris Rabb. Chris Rabb gets to the state legislature. The man is from Center Philadelphia, and they put him on the Agriculture Committee. I mean, sometimes we're our own worst enemy, for goodness sake.
That's that. And so to answer your question, these types of examples, and you're right, you just pointed to a couple of other outstanding examples. Summer Lee was one of the candidates this morning that
the complete disintegration of the party last cycle in Lackawanna, for goodness sake.
Yeah, these are the things where the party continues to self-immolate. A small handful of folks that are terrified of the change that they see. They would rather lose with a candidate that they think they can control than win with a candidate that they cannot. And that like as I said on my answer to your last question, that type of chicanery that continues, and they're learning nothing from these mistakes. Those candidates did not get endorsed out here today and across the Commonwealth because of those types of reasons. Inside baseball, we don't like your politics, despite the fact that you've been great for the party. Those are the type of things that will kill the endorsement process over time. Those are the type of things that disenfranchise people from the party system, when the party system, if done right, is invaluable to us as Democrats, especially with what we're going up against now.
6:33 Eastern Time. The Kennedy Effect is back with you live for the 27th of March, 2022. Wherever you are on Facebook, stay, enjoy. That other side of information is our home group Facebook page, hot101.net, Apple App Store, Google Play Store, tell Alexa, tune in radio app, and TCP. The morning show returns tomorrow. You can find us on their Facebook group page. I was really flying through that pretty good there for a while, and their Roku channel and so on, and check out the morning show tomorrow morning. That leads me to the question of who are we as Democrats? I asked you early on what it meant to you, but who are we as Democrats? I've actually almost started to shy away from the term progressive because I think the progressive movement isn't new. I don't think there's anything about it that's new. We did all of this before. It was called the New Deal. Jefferson and Madison themselves, from the founding of the party, fought for a progressive tax system. They fought for the estate tax and the inheritance tax, that the folks that had all the wealth would contribute the most because they had it to contribute. Teddy Roosevelt, the first self-proclaimed progressive, clearly history shows not the most welcoming person when it came to folks who didn't look like him, created the national parks, broke up the big trusts. I don't need to explain anybody about the New Deal, at least God willing, I shouldn't have to. In fact, it goes back to Teddy Roosevelt, who was the very first one to talk about a national health care system. Truman talked about a national health care system. I don't have to talk about John Kennedy, put a man on the moon, and the Peace Corps and the Great Society. Or are we the party of the 90s that said, yeah, big insurance money's okay. Sure, we'll do what they tell us, but hey, big insurance money's okay. And that group of party officials here in the Commonwealth, in New Jersey, when I was living there at the time, and on a national level, that realized, hey, we can make a pretty good buck on this. Who are we?
We are all of those things. we are all of those things. And what we have to be now are the torchbearers of all of those things, because many of those things that the Democratic Party made and helped to materialize to make this country what it is. Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican, right? By the way, he would not win a primary today. He would lose in a primary.
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
Well, actually, by modern standards, he'd be considered a progressive Democrat.
He absolutely. Yeah, you think about how far they've gone in the direction they've gone. Ronald Reagan would not win a primary because he did a deal with Tip O'Neill in 1982 and put revenue in the budget. Eisenhower would not win a primary.
He raised taxes on the middle class 18 times, Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, he so goodbye to Eisenhower. Abraham Lincoln, he would be gone. He would not win a primary. They would not. I don't even think. Yeah, like I said, Reagan. Nixon did the EPA. He'd be gone. They wouldn't have a chance. They wouldn't have a chance. But
Jim,
who are
should we be all those things? Should we be the party of the 90s that decided that big corporate money was good?
The unintended consequences of making decisions like that, I think we're starting to see a lot of that now. We're seeing a lot of the consequences of decisions like that and what happened. We have to be honest with ourselves every single day. We are the party of inclusion, the party of ideas, the party that is not afraid to say, why not? But we also have to be the party that has to be honest with itself, that if an idea or a path that we have chosen or that we have taken is bearing unintended consequences and hurting the base upon which we are charged to represent, we have to be honest. Well, maybe we have to walk something back, case in point, or to chart a different course. But at the same time, all those great points that you mentioned that this party helped bring into fruition, they're under attack. They've never been under attack like they're under attack right now. So we have to continue to be the party of all those things. And now we have to be the party that vociferously defends those things that we fought so hard generation after generation after generation to bring into existence for the betterment of this republic. So yes, the answer is yes, but that doesn't mean that you're not cognizant and remain cognizant of the decisions we've made and the directions we've taken and to plot a different course if necessary. So we're all of that. They think linear. I've always said we're the party of quantum. They're the party of linear. It's one way or the other with them. But democracy and in a free society is a quantum experiment every millisecond of every single day, which constantly has to be studied, tweaked, analyzed, and modified. So yes, we're all those things, and every so often we will have to change up depending on what works and what doesn't based on our decisions. But our decisions are always made for the people versus their decisions made to acquire power. That's the most significant difference between the two parties.
But then, shouldn't it be easy? Again, to try to tie back a little bit to what we were talking about rural. The presumptive Democratic nominee for governor, Josh Shapiro, should be able to turn on a debate stage to his right, figuratively and literally, and look at whomever is standing behind that podium. He should be able to look out into that crowd and to the people watching on television and listening on radio and say, folks, we might not agree on everything. If you listed the top 10 issues that are important to you, we might only agree on 3 of them. But the person to my right doesn't even think that the governmental system to address those issues should even exist anymore. William Penn chose the word Commonwealth for a reason. Commonwealth, all of us together, a society, a community. When one does well, we all do well. The person to my right doesn't even think government should exist anymore, but yet has the unmitigated gall to run to control it. It seems to me that's a relatively simple message that Democrats, independents, and even some disaffected Republicans who might not agree with Mr. Shapiro on a damn issue, but can at least agree with the fact that we deserve a right to vote and that government should exist. A free and fair government should exist. It should be easy, shouldn't it? But yet we know it's not going to be.
It's not going to be easy, but that talking point that you just so eloquently articulated is something that I suspect that our inevitable Democratic nominee for governor will share. And he won't just share it when he's on the debate stage. He'll share it when he goes door to door and when he continues to go across his Commonwealth. He's been going across his Commonwealth for so long now and working so hard on making the distinctions between who we are and what they stand for and who their standard bearer will be, and the fact that their standard bearer will not be for those things that we emulate and that we built this Commonwealth upon. We are looking.
Might very well be an insurrectionist.
Yeah, it could very well be. I mean, some of them are doing very well in the polling I've seen.
Mhm.
So you talk about how this is supposed to be a very, very ominous midterm for the Democratic Party. Many people are drawing comparisons to 2010. I'm not prepared to go there yet. I'm not prepared to go there because of how different the Republican Party is today from what it was even 12 years ago. The paradox of their situation is that they have to run so far to the right and embrace this type of thinking and embrace these types of candidates in order to get through a primary, that when it comes time to get back into the realm of common sense for the November election, we have so many statements and acts and literature and platform issues that they've articulated in order to get elected, that we simply have to put it up on a stage, and it will scare the hell out of most of the voters in Pennsylvania. So the GOP is supposed to have a very good year this year, but at the same time, when you see what they become and what they have to do or say to get elected in a primary, that will not resonate with the average voter this fall. So I'm not prepared to say that Pennsylvania is going to have a bad year. You have candidates like Mr. Shapiro who are going to be able to say things like that. And big if we can get some of that infrastructure back into place at the local, county, and state level to assist that man and to assist our entire slate of candidates.
Flip the legislature finally.
Well,
with the same message. How many insurrectionists are still sitting in the legislature?
Yeah.
Kristen asks, I want to see if I could get us to talk about the constituency caucuses that you helped create. And I want to enter that discussion with this question, if we could.
Sure.
Your thoughts on outreach to Gen Z. They are a rising electoral force, and they are not registering with the party. There are also a chunk of millennials and Gen Z who are incredibly frustrated with the party due to a lack of movement on student debt and environmental protections, and increasing same for Black voters. Your thoughts?
As you can see, I moved my background out of that other room. I was getting some sun, and based on the glare, I don't want to blind your viewers, so I got into a room with a little better lighting. So
you're not as lucky as me. I'm damn near translucent. The lights tend to go through this pale Irish lack of color, as it were.
Right.
But
I had to move out of that sunlight. So thank you for rolling with me while I did that.
No worries.
No. How do you engage Gen Z? You engage Gen Z. You have to build the party, and we talked about earlier. You have a party that has to grow and adapt and change and breathe with what's going on in society around it. It's not something that's like a statue. It doesn't cure like concrete. It's more like clay. You have to mold it to fit the needs of the people who want to engage with it and that are relying upon it for representation, for involvement, for activism, to run themselves and to pursue an agenda that's beneficial to them. So you talk to the Gen Z generation about, who are their leaders or who, the people that are reaching out to you from the generation and what are issues that are important to them. And you give them a seat at the table and you give them a buy-in to whatever the conversation is and whatever it is that you need to have done. And their input has to be as invaluable, as important as anybody else who's sitting at that table. So the easy answer is how you engage is you open the doors, you open the windows, you get back to that model we were talking about. and you make sure that every demographic who wants to be at the table has a seat at the table. And back to something you commented on earlier, and I used to say this when I was chairman all the time, know right now that whomever you are in this room, you're not going to walk out of here with everything you want. None of us is going to do that. But you will be able to walk out of here knowing that your voice was heard, and you're going to get some of the things that you're looking to get. And that's how you build the consensus. Taking my ball and going home, you sound more like the Tea Party when you talk like that. So the better we do at making sure the Gen Zs and the Gen X and everybody else is there with those outreach caucuses, the better off we will be. Maybe it's time for the state Democratic Party to talk about a caucus like that. You're only limited on ethnic and outreach caucuses by your imagination. And that's the beauty of the interface. People don't know that there's a committee or that they can go to these meetings. You can go there on Friday night and go to one of these caucuses, or go in the morning to one of these caucuses when they're having their breakfast meetings. And you can have your voice heard in whichever caucus it is that you think you need to be sitting in. And then you can come up onto the floor. And while the committee's taking place and doing business, you're back there watching the whole thing unfold. So the expansion of the outreach in the ethnic caucuses is key and critical to engaging all demographics, including the demographic of your caller and your listener.
One of the hats I wear is as a strategist and I guess sort of officer, because we don't really have a formal officer structure with our Revolution Pennsylvania, and we have dedicated ourselves since last fall, really since the last cycle, to getting, recruiting, finding, seeking out, and aiding candidates to run for their local county, the local municipal, county, and state committee, which is why I took up the banner myself. I wasn't really thinking about it until I realized I better put my money where my mouth is, so to speak, and to get a seat at the table and to get a vote. And there is a sector of the progressive movement. I will say straight now that I don't agree with it whatsoever. But it is a sector of a growing, no, that's probably not fair. I hope we've helped stifle it, but I fear it might be growing. Sector of the progressive movement that simply likes to just lob rocks and throw Molotov cocktails at it. And they're, one of their favorite phrases is, we're going to burn it all down. Seems to me that if you burn down the house, you only are left with two things. One is a pile of ash, and the second is nowhere to live. So why is it important then? And why did you think it was important? You helped create and signed off on the creation of the Progressive Caucus. Thank you, as a member of it. The senior caucus, and as we met during the anniversary celebration for the Latino caucus. How did that help address what we just talked about, that outreach and that communication? How do these caucuses help establish or grow, or fill in proper word here, that communication? Seems to be communication is the theme we keep coming back to during this interview, but how did those constituency caucuses help grow that, help foster that? How does it help the party at large?
We significantly expanded the caucuses. In the 5 years I was there, we created the Progressive Caucus, Senior Caucus, the Rural Caucus, getting into that issue of the T, and the 67 county strategy, giving them a caucus. And then on my last day, we gavelled in the Latino Caucus, a growing demographic in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that was underrepresented and needed to have more involvement. And kudos to that great team that I worked with on all of this to get those done. They are part of the conversation that we're having to give relevance to the party, to get away from this perception that it's an insider's club, and it gets treated unfortunately like that at too many levels for too many reasons, and they're all the wrong. It's wrong to treat it as an insider's club at any level, and we're seeing that unfortunately in some of these county endorsement processes. A stark reminder that many parts of this organization still have a long way to go. But the importance of a progressive caucus was because the progressive wing of our party oftentimes felt as if it was being kept out of the conversation, being kept out of these decisions, especially as it related to endorsements, and felt as if they were just being fluffed off or given lip service. I wanted to genuinely show the progressives in Pennsylvania that that was not the case. with the Pennsylvania Democratic Party while I was there, and I thought it was important to have a caucus for the progressive wing of our party to meet and engage. And when I would go into those caucus meetings, and it's not a recent phenomenon, there was a faction in that room that had this approach that you're talking about. Just burn the whole thing down. It's our way or no way. Let's just watch this anarchy almost. And what I would say to that demographic of the progressive wing of the party is, if I close my eyes and listen, I think I stumbled backwards into a Tea Party convention. You sound and behave like everything that we are against from the other side. And how are you any better than what we're fighting against if that's where you're coming from? And every organization has that.
Exactly.
What you have to do is, you're either going to get serious about what we're here to do, or we're just not going to listen to a damn thing that you have to say. And I don't care which caucus it is. But if they're coming with that type of an agenda of chaos or burn it all down or just or do something, first of all, they're in the House too, so it's not going to help anything that they're trying to do.
Exactly. Yeah,
And-
you're
and-
burning
and-
down your own house. And
Yeah, I mean, okay,
a third
yeah,
party in this country has not succeeded
No,
since
no.
the Republican Party. And by the way, they took the Whigs out when they
Right.
did. We've never had a sustained period in this country of more than 30-ish years where more than two parties have succeeded. The country
Right.
simply isn't built for it. The Constitution,
Right.
to an extent, while not explicitly saying so, doesn't allow it. We don't have a parliamentary system here. We're probably never going to have one, no matter how much some of us think it might not be a terrible idea. If the Greens get 7% of the vote, they get 7% of the seats. It seems pretty simple, but we're not built for that. So to burn the Democratic Party to the ground, or we're going to go start another party over here, all you're going to do is open up the field. To use your sports analogy, is for the rest, we're going to split the defense. The other
Mhm.
team walks straight through and scores. So that's exactly, it's kind of why I tend to continue to speak about progressives and progressivism
Mhm.
from a historical standpoint. Free
Mhm.
college isn't a new idea. We had it.
Mhm.
We had it. We've never had a formal maximum salary in this, or maximum wage. We talk about raising the minimum wage. We never had a formal maximum wage, but we had a tax structure that held it in check. These things are not new. What was the basis of the New Deal? We're going to take millions of unemployed people, put them to work building post offices and schools and roads and seawalls and flood mitigation systems and dams and electrical grid and a phone grid. And they will then take that money and put it back into the economy. Because when a precious few people have all the money, there's no economy. It's not new. You giving voice to the progressives, as much as some people might recoil at the progressive label or term, who consider themselves more mainstream, I would even say more corporate, it's just the history of our party, isn't it?
It very much is. People instinctively will recoil from change when they get into a comfort zone. It's in our nature. But the progressivism is not about status quo. It is about asking why not, and constantly testing and changing and looking to move forward, which is what this country was built on, which was what mankind is built on. We're not built on being stagnant or sitting in neutral. And progressivism embodies that. But pragmatic progressivism, knowing that you can't get there instantly at the speed of light, it takes time to get there and be persistent and build consensus and realize and work with people to realize that we're constantly, the only constant is change in life, and especially in politics, that we're here to see what works and what needs to move differently. If everybody was happy, none of the incumbents would ever lose, or they wouldn't resign. Constantly moving. So telling people not to be afraid or not to recoil instinctively, but listen to what we have to say, listen to this idea. So yes, I mean, you're exactly right. It's always confused me a little bit to think that people recoil from the word progressive or the term progressivism when the constantly is constantly changing. It's been built on new ideas and innovation, which is what they represent. It's just that one section of it, the one wing, which we all have. That's just the unfortunate reality of any institution.
And I would submit a couple of things because, as a candidate for office, generally you don't rush up to the front of the crowd, get behind the lectern or grab the mic and say, we need to march back to the past. We always tend to look forward. But in this case, as far as I see it, and as I talk about it on this program each week, we should be learning from our history. The New Deal worked. A 94% top tax rate worked. Higher corporate taxes worked. When CEOs could not be paid in stocks but had to take a regular salary check like the rest of us, it worked. The first environmentalist, well, I could argue Teddy Roosevelt was because he created national parks. FDR saved the breadbasket of this country from the Dust Bowl with environmental policies. We've done this. Elizabeth Warren herself talked about going to community college in Oklahoma and paying $15 a credit. She had no student debt when she got done with her education. California had completely free higher education before Ronald Reagan became governor. We've done this. There's nothing to be afraid of here, folks. We know what the answers are, which is why I asked you earlier, and I guess I'm kind of circling back, but not quite. I don't think we are the party of the 90s. We're not. It's not who we are.
Well,
We're
we're
not
not.
the party that takes big gobs and sums of money from Wells Fargo and Jamie Dimon and AIG. We're the small donor, $5, $10, $20 group that goes to those corporations and says, oh, by the way, Glass-Steagall. That's who we are. Is that why we've lost that connection with rural? Because we don't trumpet what we've done, no pun intended, and because we don't talk about who we are because of what we did and that we can do it again.
You're right. We need to do a better job of reminding everyone in the rural and everywhere that these things are from the Democratic Party. Every single one of those outstanding examples that you mentioned came from us, came from this party. Why do we walk back or make excuses or fail to proudly articulate every single one of those points, that each one at the right moment in time was necessary and helped save this nation from collapse? We did those things. We should be proud of the fact that we did those things. And when we go out and communicate, which we need to do again, to recapture those votes and get back to winning, why would we not want to proudly share those stories and those examples with everyday voters? What's wrong with any single one of those things that you mentioned for anybody, irrespective of affiliation? You go look at one of those MAGA rallies, everybody standing behind that man benefited or benefits from every single one of those points you made. Why don't they know that? Why aren't they being told that? Now, some of those folks, God bless them, you're never going to flip. But the other ones, the moderates and the independents and the others, need to be reminded. Who's going to do it if not us? We need to do better at that. And there's no better time than, well, I'm not going to get into the talking points, but we have to be persistent and resilient and not let up on the gas every single day to remind people that that's the Democratic Party that built this country with those types of ideas. And it was always at the right time in our history, in a time of crisis, that the right leader came up, stood up, got into office, and wasn't afraid to embrace things which were viewed maybe as controversial, radical, or extraordinary. but they were extraordinarily necessary and they saved us. So yes, back to the communication and the talking points. We're proud of these things and we continue to be proud of these things. And we will do these things as necessary and as needed as we move forward to keep this country going.
How much tougher do we need to be? My consulting work, when I talk to a candidate, I try to convince them to not be afraid to use some pretty damn blunt language. God knows the other side does a very good job of it. But to use the L word, lie, to use the F word, fascist. How much tougher do we need to be? If I'm on a stage, if I'm running for state rep, for example, and I'm on a stage with fill in the blank, I could probably name, I can name a couple, 170 something of them. A David Rowe, an Emmerich here from in the Valley, a Mackenzie here from in the Valley. And when they try to stand in front of folks and say, I believe in a good education. No, folks, I don't understand why Mr. Emmerich is so desperate to hold on to his office that he's lying to you. I don't know if he thinks you're stupid or he just doesn't respect you, but he's lying. Because here's his record right here in a piece of paper where he voted against and against and against and against. Let me tell you what I'm for. How much tougher do we need to be?
I think we need to do a better job in that department of pushing back more aggressively. If you remember, I had a pretty decent reputation for when I had to give a speech that I wouldn't pull any punches when it came to our certain Republican counterparts. If you needed to call them the L word or whatever word or call them out for their record, we didn't hesitate to go after them with the same tenacity that they were coming after us. The difference being we told the truth. We didn't lie. And we had no qualms about going after them and hitting them hard because of everything that was at stake. You cannot negotiate with an ideology that refuses to compromise or negotiate with you. You can't try to find common ground with someone or something that wants to take out the middle class or the Democratic Party altogether. Do you honestly think that we can sit here and compromise with a MAG and a red hat and find common ground right now? No.
I've referred to them as ineloquently, perhaps, as the Jews wandering the desert in Sinai. God decreed that generation had to die out before they could enter the promised land. I think there's a generation that simply has to pass on. They're uncompromising. They're introvertible. You can't talk to those folks, and the folks who are exploiting them, by the way, whether they believe, I don't know if Doug Mastriano believes all the what crap that spews out of his face, but he's gained money and power from it, so he keeps spewing it. I think that whole generation simply has to disappear. It sounds very, very cruel, and I get that. I know how cold that can sound, but I'm just not so. I've told Democratic candidates who have been kind enough to listen to my advice before, you see the red hat, go the other direction. You're not doing anything for that person. They just as soon shoot you in the face as anything else because you happen to have a D in parenthesis behind your name, not because you want to help them, or you might even agree on some stuff. You have a D, so the hell with you. You're gone.
I don't wish them out of existence, but I will not show them any quarter in the political arena. None. They get no quarter from me, and they should get no quarter from us, because that's what they asked for. So we'll give you what you want, which is no quarter.
Sometimes you get the government you voted for.
Yeah. But what I will do is I will pull no punches. We will pull no punches when it comes to facts, truth, and accuracy. And I'm not, going to waste an ounce of energy on trying to convince any of them about anything, because God bless them. I've never seen anything like it. I've read about it, and I think we all know where we read about it. But there are others. They're not always lost on that side of the aisle. I'm sorry. There are moderates over there that are dismayed and embarrassed, and quite frankly, afraid to put their heads up because of that. Those folks you can reach out to. Those folks we can communicate with. And if those folks see the same forcefulness and passion in our rhetoric and in our messaging with truth and not fiction and not QAnon tinfoil hat nonsense, then guess what? We're going to do better with them in November. But they have to see the passion and the aggression and the strength in our words and our messaging to reinforce the veracity and the truth in what we believe we're saying in our beliefs. We need more exclamation points and not commas. And when we do that, we will get those folks.
7:05 Eastern time, entering our final hour, or at least, well, we'll be here for the final hour, and as long as Mr. Byrne is welcome to stay. I do have a couple more topics I definitely want to get to. By the way, kicking off just shortly, I know I'm much more of a soccer fan than any of the rest of you probably. The USA is actually trying to qualify for the World Cup, so we're ending at 8 o'clock, so I can hopefully catch the second half of that, and the USA men's national team will qualify for the World Cup. They can qualify tonight with a win over Panama. Wherever you are on Facebook, that other side of information, hot101.net, Apple App Store, Google Play Store, Alexa, and the TuneIn Radio app, and TCP, the Cultured Professional. Proud to be with all of them. And if you ever miss any of our live program, you can find it in a recorded version anywhere that it has been shared and accepted across Facebook. And you can also find us, the best place to find the recorded parts of the program, or not parts, the whole thing, he should have said, is youtube.com, youtube.com/that other side of information. I want to ask you about a kind of inside baseball question. I did mention it before. It seems to me that we need to improve, if not reform, the balance of representation throughout our Commonwealth inside our party. Too much of our party, too much of our party kind of just throws their hands up and says, Philly and Pittsburgh make all the decisions and we just have to live with it. There's 850,000 people in Lehigh and Northampton County. If we bring in Monroe, we're up to 1 million. And then our neighbors in Berks and Carbon are probably at 1.5 million. It's the Allegheny Valley. I have told folks in my campaign of sorts, I don't know how hard you actually campaign for state committee, but in my campaign of sorts, that one of my ideas that I want to take to state committee is a dual mathematical formulation of how we allocate representation to the counties. And if that means growing our committee, then so be it. If instead of it's of 500, we have 750, then I think we're all the better for it. And I know that that representation is currently based on Democratic voter registration, but we're also supposed to be, and you and I have talked about tonight, being the Big Tent party. We want to represent everyone that votes, not just votes for us. The Republicans that live here in this valley, if I were to sit in office, I represent them too. So why are we not doing a better job of spreading that representation out throughout the Commonwealth, or even if it means just flat out increasing the number of people on our committee? There's 1 million people here, Jim. How are we not somewhat as important as Philadelphia or the Allegheny Valley? Because I can tell you right now, the Lehigh Valley is dramatically underrepresented, and I think all too often overlooked.
You touch on a very good point. The engagement of the other geographic regions of the state party and of the state are critical. They were certainly critical for our success, and they are even more critical as population continues to grow. You know, the state Democratic Party, as you know, has 8 regional caucuses in addition to the ethnic and outreach that we've already spoken. Allegheny has its own, Philadelphia has its own. And then you have the Southeast Caucus, which encompasses the collar counties around Philadelphia. I believe it's Delaware, Berks,
Montgomery,
Bucks, Lehigh, Montgo. Yeah, and then you have like Chester and Cumberland sitting right there. You have you go up into Monroe, or and then you got the Northeast quadrant, the Northwest quadrant. And what I always noticed and what I encouraged was the leadership of the caucus chairs of the non-Allegheny Philadelphia caucuses to coordinate and communicate and work a lot amongst themselves to come with blocks of votes. And they would do that. they would do that. But the party needs to expand with the with population as well. There's no reason why the party should not have a conversation about adding seats to the state Democratic Party for the Southeast Caucus to encompass those counties we just mentioned that continue to grow. And again, because you have 50 plus votes coming out of Philadelphia and about 41 votes coming out of Allegheny, that's a block of 90 right there.
Mhm.
But if you put Northeast, if they come together and block, if they're on the same page, again, we're talking inside baseball, we're talking tactics, strategy.
It is a little inside baseball, but representation
you
matters.
come with a block. You come with a
Right.
block. You now bring in the Northwest Caucus along with the Northeast. Now you have a force. And if you can get the ethnic caucus of the rural community to pull votes out of Philly or Allegheny from their outreach caucus, now you've watered down that block coming from the two biggest counties. It is a perpetual chess game when you're lining up those votes for resolutions, bylaw changes, endorsements, or whatever thing might be on the table of business. But it's not the kiss of death if Allegheny and Philadelphia line up as a block. It was at one point. It wasn't when I left, because these other groups were interfacing, communicating, and networking in a way that I had never seen before. So it wasn't a guarantee if they came united and your candidate wasn't who they picked, that you couldn't find some relief by trying to coordinate the other caucuses.
I also find the split in the regional caucuses of Northampton and Lehigh to be figuratively, very, very figuratively, politically criminal. If there are two counties in this Commonwealth, if not this entire country, that are more inexorably linked than Lehigh and Northampton County, I defy you to find them for me. Try to do so, because you can't. But and the fact that we have been split into different regional caucuses was intentional to water down the effect of the Lehigh Valley. It is also something I will try to remedy. But I also think, along with you, when I lived in New Jersey, when I was an elected office holder in New Jersey, and automatically made a member of my local, county, and state committee, when we would have, well, look, it helped that we had Atlantic City. We had our meetings in Atlantic City. That didn't hurt. But we routinely had over 1,000 people, sometimes as many as 2,500. And every elected official showed up as a matter of course. If they didn't, it was scandalous. If one state rep comes and visits us and gives us a speech in Harrisburg, we think someone's descended from the heavens and tapped us on the head. Why is there such a disconnect? And by the way, those folks are members of the Pennsylvania committee by being elected. Why is there such a disconnect, in your opinion, or unless you think I'm wrong, and please tell me that, between our elected officials and our committee? Why should it be a special occasion that one state rep decides to visit us at a state committee meeting and talk to us? It should be there as a matter of course, in my opinion.
You should be there as a matter of course. That's, you're going to the Mecca. You're going to, where it's all supposed to be originating from. You're going to the point of the origin of all things Democratic. So it should be better. Quite frankly, I did not notice that type of a problem when I was there. We had senators and we had state senators and state reps all over the place on Friday night and all day Saturday. Would get, when Rendell was in, he would show up, or Bob Casey would come for an evening. So we didn't really have a problem with that. But I can tell you why, if it's happening. A politician's going to go where a politician thinks they need to be in order to stay in power, or to get votes, or to share their message with people who are going to disseminate that message to the constituency. And if a politician or an elected office holder doesn't think that there's anything to be gained, their time is valuable. All of our time is valuable. If they don't think that spending their time at a committee meeting is going to be beneficial to the constituents that they represent, or to themselves, they're not going to go. So if they're not seeing it, that speaks volumes to the status of any party at any level, if they're only getting one state rep, and that's like a celebration to have that person, that committee needs to do a better job to explain its relevance at the ballot box and in its actions. And if they do that, they'll get turnout. I mean, you know, we did that in Millville when I first got in. There was a very dysfunctional, fractured party. We put it together and put a heck of a team together. And by the time we got that party reorganized, shame on you if you missed the Millville Democratic Committee event. That is, get back to what we said at the beginning of the first hour. The algorithm works at all levels. It's just the geography that changes. If the party is producing and is relevant and is successful and has movers and shakers and activists, and it's communicating, there it is, effectively with everybody, politicians will be kicking the doors down to get into that room. That's more of a referendum on the party and not the elected official.
Why we are in, well, we've just sort of finished, so to speak. You know, the paperwork has to be in tomorrow.
Mhm.
The second petition season that we had here and in the Commonwealth this year, and obviously our discussion has been tremendously weighted here in Pennsylvania, but we are fortunate, blessed to have listeners around the country and literally around the world. So even though we've been concentrating obviously on Pennsylvania, perhaps a more general question. And I think and what's happening in Pennsylvania is happening in your local municipalities and counties and state parties too, folks. So it's not unique just to Pennsylvania. You're probably facing the same things, and any advice or answers that we might provide you here in this program will work for you in Idaho and Montana and Arizona and California and Florida and everywhere else. Why is it so important for people to get involved?
Why is it important for people to get involved? Well, I mean, I think the answer.
You know,
is
if as I said, our revolution, this is our sole purpose until primary day, is voting, is getting people to run and elected to state committee. Why, when you were chair in your town, in your county, and at the state level, and you had to go around and make the case, we want you to get involved, why did you tell people it was so important to become involved?
Because this is a country, freedom doesn't come in.
You froze. Oh, getting to the meat and potatoes, and you froze.
Merchants and everyday people, and who just got up off their asses and made a difference and said enough. I mean, and since that's what we were built on, that's what must perpetuate it. It's the flame of freedom, the flame of democracy, and you have to give it oxygen or it will die. We're the oxygen. If you sit around complacent and let someone else make decisions for you, and that continues to grow, pretty soon it's going to be the micro percentage of individuals calling the shots for everybody else. Active freedom is not free. It requires active engagement, active individuals, passionate, and you can't sit on your ass and watch it go across your front porch or down your street, or you're going to be left behind. And then you're going to say, why did this happen? Or why did that happen? I'm getting very remedial on this, but it's because our society and how it was built requires you to get up and to get involved. That's why.
I'm sure you would like to go have some dinner. Just 7:30, if you would be so kind, because I only have two more. I only really have two more questions, and then I will turn the floor over to you, and you can anything that we might have missed or whatever. But I'll get to that.
Okay.
President Kennedy told us and told the nation that politics can and should be a noble profession. Can it still be?
I think that it is a noble profession. I think that it is an absolutely extraordinary profession, and it is a gift. It is a gift that people have died for. It is a gift that they risked their lives for when they cut loose our founding fathers. It is a great experiment. It is an honor to serve in a free society. But as long as you're doing it for the right reasons, it's a tremendous honor. It's also it is a tremendous opportunity to make good and to leave things better than when you found them. Unfortunately, as we've seen, it's become polluted with lobbyists. It's become polluted with people who come in and they start to make decisions. Either they came in that way or they flipped at some point. They start making decisions based on what is required for them to hold on to their power and their perks. And they are the ones that give this great experiment a bad name. I still think it is an honor to serve. It was an honor to serve as mayor, as council president, as chairman of the county, of the state. Those were honorable opportunities I was blessed to be provided with. They were gifts. And I'm very fortunate and proud of the opportunities I was given by others to serve and to make decisions with them and on their behalf. I still think that continues. For every negative story you read, and there's a lot of them, there are hundreds of thousands of elected officials all across this country making decisions every day and doing things every day for the betterment of their base and for the betterment of all of us. You don't read about them because negative ads don't sell. Positive stories don't sell ads in newspapers. They don't sell ads on. True. It's still a very honorable profession.
During his first campaign for president, Ronald Reagan came to Bethlehem. He stood in front of the blast furnaces and told the folks that were listening, and I believe it was in a campaign ad for him as well. You look like you froze. I hope you didn't freeze on me. He stood in front of the blast furnaces and told the gathered crowd that those blast furnaces would operate and feed their families and sustain this Lehigh Valley for 100 years. And he lied. How do we tell folks about that great big lie? And I feel like I have to keep talking because Mr. Byrne is frozen on my screen, and that stinks because I'm just ready to let him go. He dropped. Oh, and I had the big question. I was saving the big question for last. I'll get there. Maybe he'll dial back in. I can't believe it. Oh, am I going to get cut off from the big question? I was saving it for last. Oh, that's what I get for saving it for last. Maybe he'll dial back in. I don't know if he's going to, though. I think he was getting, yeah, as you noticed, probably he was getting some, waving from off camera, like, are you going to come and eat dinner? Or like, are you finally going to end this thing? He dropped, and I'm not even going to get a chance to ask him the big one. Oh my goodness, is that frustrating? Wowee. Oh my God. That makes me nuts. But let's think about everything that Mr. Byrne did have to say, that we have a lot of work to do in our party. And if you notice, there was a consistent theme throughout the discussion, and it is communication. It's communication with people inside our party. It's communication to each other. It's communication to our friends and family and neighbors. And it's all down, it seems to all come down to communication. The best issue advocacy, the best policy, the best, oh, he's so kind. Oh my God, is he kind? Oh, he's so kind, he dialed back in. The best antidote for so much of what's happening in our society is communication. We can advocate for the best policies ever, but if we cannot talk to people about them, then how do we move on? You are the kindest individual ever, because you're for you to dial back in for 6 minutes is absolutely amazing. You are the best. That is too kind. That is really too kind. It's a signal, man. Hey, rural broadband. Rural broadband here in PA.
Was that me or you?
I think it was you.
Oh, I'm
I hate to
sorry
say.
about
I think
that.
when you moved rooms, I think you moved into a dead spot. But
Oh,
I was
sorry about that.
No, please, not at all. Are you kidding? You've been so kind with your time. Never, please, don't worry about that.
Thank you.
Let me ask you the one last question. I'm going to let you go at 7:30.
Okay.
But this is a big one.
All right.
And I'm going to say straight away, it might not be one that you want to answer, but I'm going to try to ask it in a way that you will answer it.
All right.
Because I think you know what I'm going to ask you.
I do.
What is your future?
My future is to stay involved. I mean, I've been involved in this Democratic Party for 30 years, and I have no intention of not being involved in the future. One of the most flattering things I've experienced since I left the state party as chairman in the last 7 years is to be just as engaged with the members of the committee and elected officials around the state as I was when I held that title. That hasn't really waned at all. And that's so flattering to me because that leads me to believe that I must have done something, and my team that I worked with, and they were so talented, and all the people in that room whom I miss very much. We must have done something right together for these conversations to continue. And I plan on continuing to have those conversations, and in some way, shape, or form, still be around to have these conversations moving forward. I'd like to think that the years I've had in this position and as part of this party would be useful to all of us as a team and collectively moving forward, especially in this cycle. So the short answer is you'll be seeing and hearing a lot more of me moving forward.
Would you like to break any news and tell us at what level you intend to stay involved?
Well, where we are right now.
He asked carefully.
Yeah, where we are right now seems to be a very good spot. I like where I am right now, and I like what I'm doing right now. Would I like to be more involved with all of you in the weeks and months ahead, more than just maybe as a guest? Yes, I would. I think I have a lot to give to all of us and to work with all of us as a team in some capacity. So yeah, I'd like to see my role get a little more active moving forward than it may have been in the last couple of years.
You don't want to do a guy solid and break some news here?
No.
There is not a single person, and I mean this with all sincerity, because you know what I'm asking you, and you're being very tactical about it, counselor. Very well done. But you would certainly have my support for whatever that is worth to you. This one small, humble guy here in the Lehigh Valley. When I moved back to the Lehigh Valley in 2016, and from that day forward, I would also add, by the way, any other volunteer organization, I would have been handed more work and projects and things that I would have known what to do with. I had to fight and claw to get involved in my own party. And I found that very shocking, quite honestly, because most of the folks in the room looked at me with a side eye and said, well, who the hell is he? And is he a Kennedy, a real one? Or is he using some form of name? And what does he want? And what is he trying to get? I am trying to get stuff. I'm trying to get crazy radical stuff like education for folks and healthcare and things like that. All the things that the president and the senator advocated for. But I say this to you with all honesty and with all sincerity, in all of the folks that I have met, because again, your chairmanship was before I moved back. Not a single bad word has been said about you or your chairmanship. And they are days that are looked back on with great with joy, and with a bit of sadness, because they are not the days that we are in now. So let me just very carefully say that. I think you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Let me also say to you that I have some bad news for you, and you are in the family now.
Thank you.
And I hope very, very deeply and with all sincerity that this is not the only time that you come and visit us. If you have anything that you want to share with me, my audience, my listeners, my viewers, again, literally around the entire globe, even if it's just a quick call, 5 minutes, whatever, please know that the doors to this program are open to you. And I very much hope that the next time the Pennsylvania State Democratic Committee meets in person, A, that I will be a member of it, B, that Kristen will be a member of it, and that you will come visit us at the infamous Our Revolution Hospitality Room, and that we may break bread in face-to-face and not just electronically. So please know that all of these things are open to you, and very much open to you, because I am more grateful than I can express to you for the time and your willingness to come and talk to me, our audience, the people of Pennsylvania, and literally around the globe tonight.
Thank you so much. I thank you for thinking of me. I'm glad to be here. I look forward to coming back. I'm very honored to be part of your family. I appreciate your invitation into this family. Anything I can do to be of service to the party and to you and to our cause, I'm always a phone call or a Facebook message away. And I am ruminating about coming up there for the June meeting, and I will certainly look forward to spending time with you if I am there.
Well, you are welcome to visit us at our Revolution anytime as well. And before you go, I want to just open the floor to you and just give you a free and open pass. If there's anything that we did not get to talk about that you really wanted to talk about, a thought you maybe did not get to finish because I started rambling, or or anything of the sort. How do people get a hold of you? How do they follow you? How do you connect with folks? What is the best way to connect? All of those things. The floor is yours. Please just have at it, and then apologize to your family from me for keeping you for so long ago. Have some dinner, but the floor is yours.
Thank you. My Twitter account at Mayor Jim Byrne. It's on my Facebook page. You created a link to my Facebook page. You can find my email there, my Twitter account there. I've been as active with consulting and giving advice to folks who have a vision and passion to do the good things that we do. And I'm always accessible to them, and it's flattering that they reach out. To the state committee, I love you guys, miss you. I enjoy those rooms, gaveling those meetings into session. We did a lot of great things together, And I know that you know that there is a path. There is a path for this party to do what it needs to do. You just need the right people up in that front dais to make those things happen. That's all you need. It's the fault of these last 5 years and the issues the parties face have nothing to do with any of you. You haven't changed. You're just as passionate as you ever were. Let's have those conversations in the weeks and months ahead about what we need to do to win, not for any of us as individuals, but as a team. And I think about you guys all the time, and I'm glad that you stayed in touch, and I appreciate this opportunity. We can win all of these seats if we just do it the right way and roll out the right game plan. Thank you so much.
Again, I usually say I'm at risk of being repetitive. I'm going to be repetitive on purpose. Thank you. I am so sincerely humbled and so grateful for all of your time, your honesty, your answers. And please know, I'm not, no fancy dancing around. This program is open to you. We're so proud and honored to have you as part of the Kennedy Effect family. I look forward to our communications and friendships growing. I think we have an awful lot in common. So if your involvement follows the path you outlined, perhaps I will be part of it. And I would look forward to that, and I'd be honored by that. But just please know you are always welcome here. And thank you. Gosh, thank you so much.
Thank you. I look forward to talking with you and hopefully seeing you in person very soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Enjoy dinner. Thank you to the family. I know it took a long one.
They're right over there. Thank you. I will.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
That is Jim Byrne, former chairman of the Pennsylvania State Democratic Committee. For those of you who normally call in, especially Francis, Patricia, and so on, I will now open up the phone line. I did not, because Mr. Byrne was on a roll and because he had a lot to say and it was important. And I wanted to make sure that I got to every question. And I want to show you something really kind of weird. I always forget at the beginning of every program to grab a piece of scrap paper, a clean sheet of paper that I can write down notes or write down questions that all too often in the program I will forget. An answer will take me in a direction, and then I will sometimes forget that I wanted to revisit this. So I grabbed the first piece of paper I could grab, and I wrote down some notes and questions, and all of them are scratched out. So at least we got to everything. That's pretty cool. That's one of the better, I shouldn't rank stuff like that, you know, because every guest that comes here is valuable to me. They are friends, they are family. That one was up there, kids. That was a big one. That one was a lot. Now, listen, I would also say to you that I know that was a lot of inside baseball stuff. If you live in California or Florida, or if you are in Australia or New Zealand or in South America or Canada, where we are also blessed to have listeners, a lot of that may not have made sense to you, or you thought to yourself, I don't get it, I don't have a connection with this. Yeah, guilty, maybe a little guilty, but I assure you, the principles of what we discuss every week on this program, even though it is obviously a little weighted toward Pennsylvania because it's where I live, but it's these issues are in your communities, I guarantee you. If it's the Labour Party and Conservative Party in the UK, if it's the Labour Party of Australia, if it's the Greens of or the Social Democrats of New Zealand or in the Scandinavian countries, getting involved in your party, getting involved in politics, that the fact that politics can and should be a noble profession, these are universally accepted, I think, I hope still, and universal principles that I think we can all agree on. In fact, the war that is happening in Eastern Europe right now shows us just how valuable democracy is when an entire nation is willing to sacrifice itself to save it. So let's get to that. Randall, you have been patient. Thank you. I know that you probably wanted to speak to Mr. Byrne, but I also think you probably understand why we didn't, but you have called, so you are on the air. Let us share your thoughts, please.
Yeah, there was so much going on between both you and Jim, back and forth. He way back in the earlier part of the conversation, he was talking about two women that were incumbents, and yet their counties Democratic committees did not endorse them. And the same thing has happened here in Delaware County. Not my state rep, but one up on the main line, Haverford, Radford area, and the Delaware County Democratic Committee did not vote an incumbent that's been representing his area for 20 years, and yet here's a person that's gotten 100% voting record from environmentalists, 100% voting record from minorities in this section of the state, but he was not endorsed, and he's going to have to go it alone in the primary in May. And it's just, I don't understand. Like, it's, I just don't. Even though I'm part of the Delaware County's Democratic Committee, I just don't understand how people could take a good incumbent Democrat that has done excellent things.
Well, let me try to share a little bit with you. Let's have a conversation about this. And again, folks, we're going to wrap up at 8:00. There is a DJ. I need to find out which DJ it was that wanted to come on at 8. So keep that in mind. Place is going to keep right on rocking along. Right on. DJ Earl, I think, is coming on at 8:00. Come think of it. But that said, let me just say this. One of the Chairman Byrne was very careful to say that the story that is out there of his leaving the chairmanship in the party is not really the right story. And I respect that. And let's keep in mind, he's not here to ruminate on it. But what I would say this: I have been told by an awful number, a very sizable number of folks, that one of the things that some of the moneyed interests and the powers that be, that among the reasons they did not want to see him in that position anymore was a couple different things. It was the creation of the constituency caucuses, especially the Progressive Caucus. There's a good number of conservative, corporate Democrats, moneyed interests that did not want to see that happen. But it was also the fracking ban. Did you know that the Pennsylvania State Party has as in its platform a ban on fracking? We know the power that the fossil fuel industry holds in the Commonwealth, and that is as bold a statement against it as you can make. So when you see party-sponsored opposition to folks like Summer Lee, Danielle Friel-Otten, Chris Rabb, Sarah Innamorato, Katie Muth, I could name Bethany Hallam. I could name many, many more. And my mind's just blanking. Those are the ones that come, off the top of my head. Where the way the party tried to weight the scale so heavily for Connor Lamb against John Fetterman and Malcolm Kenyatta. I truly believe it's not the majority. I actually truly believe that sincerely in my heart. But there's a number of folks who have found out that being a power person in the Democratic Party is lucrative. They have made money. There are business interests that have realized that there are people in our party that they can sway because they already own the other one. I don't think we're wholly owned, but there's some stockholders in the barn. Let's put it that way. So when you see party sponsored, especially party sponsored, but any primary challengers to these folks, that's why. Summer Lee doesn't care how much money the fossil fuel industry takes. She's not taking any money from them. She's against what they do. She's for moving past fossil fuels. She's against the $3.2 billion that we give free to the fossil fuel industry every single year in Pennsylvania. The 500 plus billion we give away to them as a country, and the over $5 trillion that we give to them free as a planetary society. So of course the fossil fuel industry doesn't want to see her in office anymore. So they push the buttons of the people that they give big, huge campaign donations to. The best investment in this country right now is a politician. I don't know if that answers what you were concerned with, Randall, but that's my take on it. And let us keep in mind, to be fair, Mr. Byrne isn't here to speak about it. That is my take. Did I lose you? Randall.
Yeah, I'm
Go
here.
ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have no idea who the person was endorsed for a state seat that's been represented by an ethical Democrat, for almost 30 years. It's just it seems like, the guy we're endorsing is only 31, and the old Democrat's 66. Yeah, I'm 68. I'm 69 years old, and that just infuriates me, because it's people like me and him that have built and enabled Delaware County Democratic Party to sweep all row offices, to sweep county council, to take over municipalities. We're the ones who were in the trenches from when it was 3-1 Republicans to registered Democrats here in Delaware County. When it was 2-1 Republicans versus registered Democrat. And now there's a slight edge of Democrats registrations in the county, and that's what this took the Democratic Party here to take over from the Republican Party. And I know he is the same way on fossil fuel. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe that absolutely is part of it. Because Greg, he's been fighting for environmental, my whole life. in politics. And to see him just get shit on by the county Democratic Party for endorsement, I'm just flabbergasted to this day that
Right.
that happened.
Let me ask you a personal question, sir. I think you told us 2 weeks ago, sorry, 2 weeks ago, because we weren't here last week, that you are running for precinct committee person so that you can be a voting member of the county party again. Do I have that correct?
Absolutely.
And you turned in your petitions, you will be on the ballot, is that correct?
Absolutely.
Did you try to run for state committee? I think I'm wrong about that one.
No, I did not try to run for state committee now.
May I ask why?
I don't know, Jeff. I just never felt the need to run for state committee.
Oh, fair enough. I was just curious. Fair enough.
I've always been happy being a local committee, and therefore part of the county committee.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a lot of friends that are running. Some of them for re-election, some for the first time, and the May primary. And obviously, I'm going to be pushing them, their names out when I go out, knock on doors, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. Yeah, my state representative, Leanne Kruger,
Mm-hmm.
is a progressive. She's been endorsed by working families, for example, which I think is wonderful.
Well, that's again, like we discuss here every week, and like we discussed with Mr. Byrne, it's the basics of the party. No one is standing up for working families, and I can make or working individuals for that matter. I can make the case that our party's not doing as good a job of it as we should be, but we're the only damn ones doing it. It's pretty simple. Yeah. It's what the party's built on, for God's sake. Thomas Jefferson did not create the University of Virginia to make money. He did it to educate people. If you were smart enough and you could keep the grades up, it didn't matter what background you came from, you could attend. Easy. That's who we are. It's supposed to be who we are. Very simple. That's it. I mean, very simple. I don't know what else to say about it. I could go on a big diatribe about it, but it's just that's part of it. Yeah. I mean, that's who we are. We're not perfect. It's like I said, a more perfect union, a more perfect party. It's who we are. We're not perfect. Yep. This party is not perfect, but damn it, it's the only one left. It's why I am so frustrated on a daily basis that it's some, not all, some of the least educated and poorest and unhealthiest among us that are the most diehard red and the most diehard Trump. So the party that took everything from you are the ones you support. I can't rectify that in my head. I still can't rectify that in my head. It bothers me on a daily basis. It bothers me in every political discussion I have. It bothers me every time I sit behind this microphone. And I continue to tell you, I don't know when it's going to happen, folks. I thought it would be sooner than later. Hopefully, maybe after our 3rd anniversary, a Wednesday night show is coming. Promise you, 9 p.m. Hopefully, maybe after our 3rd anniversary. We've had a lot of requests for a Wednesday night show. Just an hour, just a quick hit hour. Phone calls, comments, in and out. But that said, when I take the mic on a Wednesday night, it's going to frustrate me. How the people who have been most devastated, most stripped of everything, including their dignity, by conservative corporate policies that have dominated this country, starting with Nixon and all the way through to today. They're the ones that vote for everything that destroys them even further the most and the most loyally. It is mind-boggling to me. And we have to accept that it's our party that hasn't done a good enough job of making these folks, not making them, helping them come to this conclusion on their own. Because you can only tell folks so many things. There's just a good percentage of people that need to come to these realizations on their own. And when they do, you may never change them. It's kind of one of the conundrums about right-wing hate media. They have convinced these folks that the one political party, the one political persuasion that actually is trying to represent them and help them is the one that they cannot support. But if we can help these folks come to the realization that they have been lied to, exploited, used, stripped of everything they hold dear for 50 years now, but they can come, if we can help them come to that realization on their own, there'll be nothing left of the right wing, of the conservative, corporate, fascist, oligarchic movement. There'll be nothing left of it. At the end of the day, one of the great remaining strengths of our system is that when I walk into a voting booth, when Randall walks into a voting booth, when George walks into a voting booth, when Jeff Bezos walks into a voting booth, when Bill Gates walks into a voting booth, we all still only have one vote. And there's more of us. That's why we're the 99% and they're the 1%. There's more of us than there are of them. Sorry, Randall. Go ahead. I got on a roll there, kiddo. Go ahead.
That's okay.
What else you got?
I'm gonna let you go, Jeff. Hopefully somebody else will call in for the few minutes you have left.
Yeah, damn it.
Well,
Listen, before you go, first off, you're kind to clear the line, but before you go, everybody okay down there? Family good? You're healthy? Everything's all right?
yeah, everything's fine.
Beautiful. All right, my friend. You're the
Good night.
best. You're the best. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed the program tonight. I was very excited. Very, very, very excited when Mr. Byrne agreed to come on. I hope you enjoyed.
Programs you've had, in my humble opinion.
You know what? I kind of feel the same way. I was super excited about this one. I was really excited about this one. I'm excited to sit behind this mic every time. All of the behind the scenes stuff. Excuse me. I'm getting all choked up. All the behind the scenes stuff and the guest wrangling and so on does burn me out. But when it's time to sit here and talk to you, it's worth all of it. It's worth all the work. Phone line is open 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. We literally have only 7 minutes left. There will be a live DJ coming on. I think it's Earl himself, actually. I may have that wrong, but I think it's Earl himself is coming on immediately when we finish. 6 minutes left. We need to be out of here at 8 p.m. If you want to dial in, this is the time to do it. 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. Very, very interested to hear your thoughts on our program this week, everything Mr. Byrne had to say. And let me also remind you, if you missed any of tonight's program, because I did see some folks popped in late into the program. When you miss any of this, you never have to miss any of this. Everywhere that we share this program, you know how Facebook works. Once you post there, it's kind of always there. So you can find our program everywhere it's been shared, and you can watch it from the beginning everywhere it's been shared on Facebook. The best place to find all of our recordings are YouTube, youtube.com/that other side of information. The program will also air later in the week on TCP on their Roku channel as well. You never have to miss anything. One of the beauties of the program is its long form, but I also realize at times it can be one of the weaknesses because you can't sit and stare at a screen for 4 hours. But that said, you can always catch up. You can always find us. You can listen to us in bits and pieces during the week. There are actually a good number of folks that do that, that will go to the YouTube or go to the Facebook and find it and watch in little bits and pieces. And if that's what it takes for you to get through it, hey, that's cool. We're just happy to have you. 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. Let me talk to George and Franz before we go, since there are no phone callers. Tell us on Facebook, by the way, if you like the new graphic. You can tell Kristen did that for me on Canva because I don't know how to do Canva. But let me talk to Franz and George. Franz, what did you think of the conversation?
I was very favorably impressed. I heard again, and it just refreshed me, thinking back to the time that Jim had been chair, how well run that organization was. And Jim's idea of copying Howard Dean's idea of outreach, Jim did that. Jim had visited my little county twice, came down there and helped with a candidate that was running for the House. And Jim did that all over Pennsylvania. He really took it seriously, and I think his biggest positive was that he understood the need for communication with everybody. And
that was the word that kind of kept coming up, wasn't it? It was communication.
Yeah. And I'll have to add here, I'll take it quickly, but that's the singular thing that I think was key to my success in 4 years of successes as chair in Lebanon County. I was always in touch with everybody. Communication is super important.
And that's exactly why, in addition to the fact that I never shut up and I have a pretty big ego, that's why I started. It's supposed to be a little funny. That's why I started, but it's true, probably. That's why I started this program, was communication, to get the message out there. Folks in red areas, MAGA hats, F Biden flag folks, we aren't the enemy. We just aren't. You have been lied to and used and exploited. And I think you're smarter than that. I think you're better than that. And if we don't agree on ending student debt or wind and solar, or hey, those are discussions that we can have. But we can't have the discussions until we start having discussions. You have been lied to. You have been lied to. And you're better than that. And I have faith that the deep, deep, deep divides in our country can be mended. And as Mr. Burns said, they're only mended by communication. It's the only way that we do it. It is 7:59, so we're under 60 seconds. Time for me to wrap up. We will return next week, which is April 4th, I think. It's the 3rd. Thank you. Geez, you think I'd know that? We will return next week live. Our guest is scheduled to be William Compton. He is running for the United States House of Representatives in Kentucky. Nice to have a guest from outside the Commonwealth. We are a nationwide and worldwide program, so you are all welcome. We will return next week live with our guest. until then, please take care of yourselves and each other. We love you. Thank you for being part of our family, and we will see you next week. Until then, take care, be safe, and good night.
Good night.